Chapter 465, Strawberry Sunday. Dante was right. With the sound of high heels, a tall and sexy black-haired beauty appeared. Her long black hair was soft and beautiful, and it was tied into a tall bun on top of her head. There were fluttering ribbons decorating her hair bun, and she was wearing a black, tight-fitting suit. At least, it looked leathery. This tight leather suit accentuated her figure to perfection and exquisiteness, and her long legs and high heels made her hips and butt stand out. On her fair face, there was a pair of black-rimmed glasses. In addition, there was a small black enchanting mole at the corner of her mouth. When people saw her, it felt as though she was a mature elder sister. However, the most surprising thing was the two golden red guns in her hands. Not only was she holding them in her two hands, but if you looked closely, you would find that there were two similar guns inserted in the heels of both her high heels. Sarath's eyes widened. The visual impact this beautiful big sister gave him was tremendous. When she turned the corner and saw Dandy's group of 4 half-demons, the long, straight, black-haired lady was clearly stunned for a moment. Then she immediately raised her hands and pointed her guns at the 4 of them. But after seeing that the 4 of them did not look like angels, she asked doubtfully, "Who are you? Why are you here?" "Relax, relax." Dante smiled and gestured with his hands face down. "We're just lost. Beautiful lady, it's an honor to meet you. May I know your name?" However, maybe it was because Arthas and his beard stubble was not her cup of tea, but the black-haired lady turned a deaf ear to Dandy's pickup line. Instead, she sniffed in puzzlement, and then her expression changed. She immediately pulled the trigger and shot 2 shots at Dante. Whoa! Dante squatted down with his hands behind his head. 2 bullets flew over his head and hit the shop sign behind him, causing it to collapse with a crash. Problems with objects in the purgatory space would also happen in the human world. The blurry human figures around seemed frightened and scattered in all directions. The moment she fired, it naturally caused the half-demon team to become tense. With a whoosh, Sarath took out Calamity. Nero also took out his blue rose and pointed the muzzle at the black-haired lady opposite him. Virgil did not have a gun, but his left thumb was pressing against Yamato's hilt. "I'm fine. Calm down." Fortunately, Dante spoke out at this moment. After standing up, he hurriedly stopped everyone and told them not to be rash. Then he said to the black-haired lady, "Ma'am, it's not polite to greet people like this." "Shut up. I can smell the scent of sulfur on you from miles away." The black-haired lady held her guns, which were still emitting smoke from the muzzles, and said coldly, "When could demons appear in this world?" The 4 of them looked at each other. "So that's how it is." It could not be helped. Although they were half-demons, Dante and the others also had demonic auras. Although the smell on their bodies was much fainter than that of true demons, considering that the purgatory space here was full of the aura of holy light, the demonic smell on their bodies naturally seemed a bit thick. "Hey, there's no smell of sulfur. Did you smell wrong?" Dante tried to joke as he spread his hands and smiled. "It's clearly a masculine scent. I admit that I haven't showered for a few days, but you shouldn't have such a big reaction, right?" Nero almost fell. "To think that you can describe the smell of sulfur as masculine. Dante, you're really talented." However, the black-haired lady was not so easy to deceive. Facing the grinning Dante, she shot twice at the ground near his feet, scaring him so much that he took 2 steps back. She said coldly, "Don't move. I've been dealing with demons for a long time, so it's impossible for me to be mistaken. Tell me, what are you trying to do by pretending to be humans?" "Huh?" Hearing her words, Dante was stunned for a moment before reacting and probing, "You've dealt with demons? You're an Umbra witch? Are you Bayonetta?" This time, it was the black-haired lady who was stunned. She asked skeptically, "I'm Bayonetta. How do you know my name?" Yes, the one who appeared in front of them was Bayonetta, the Umbra witch who possessed the left eye of darkness. It was precisely because of her identity as a witch that Bayonetta said that she often dealt with demons, so it was reasonable for her to smell the demonic auras on the 4 of them. "Ha, great." Dante could not help but slap his thigh and laugh. Nero and the others heaved a sigh of relief and put away their guns. Dante turned around and clapped Nero. "I didn't expect us to be so lucky. It didn't take much effort." Putting away their guns naturally meant putting down their hostility. Seeing their actions, Bayonetta lowered her gun slightly, but she did not let down her guard. "You haven't answered me yet. How do you know my name?" "Hello, Bayonetta, let me introduce myself. I'm Dante." Dante introduced them one by one. "This is my brother Virgil, my nephew Nero, and this brat is Sarath. We're not demons but half-demons. We do have demonic auras, But we're not disguising as humans like you think. Half-demons? Bayonetta looked at the four of them doubtfully for a while. To be honest, she was a little unclear. "It's great to meet you here," Dante continued. "In fact, we need your help now." Bayonetta spun the guns in her hands, then slung them over her shoulders and raised her chin. "Okay, tell me first." "We came from the demon world." Dante pointed above his head. "We came here to find a demon named Rodin, but we don't know where he is. The person who sent us said that if we could find you, you might know his whereabouts. We were worried about how to find him, but we didn't expect you to appear." "Demon world?" Bayonetta frowned and pushed a gun against her glasses. "Why are you looking for Rodin?" Thus, Dante selectively told Bayonetta about the current situation. "You're saying that you came from the twin world on the other side?" Bayonetta was really shocked this time. The former ruler of the demon world colluded with the Lumen sages and escaped here? Now that the spatial channel between heaven and the demon world has opened, the two worlds are facing war? "Yes, the situation is serious. We don't have much time, so we need to find Rodin quickly," Nero said. "No wonder." Bayonetta finally put away her guns. She stood on the spot with her hands on her hips and muttered to herself, "No wonder the angels have disappeared in the past few days. I was still wondering why I specially entered the purgatory space to find traces of them. I didn't expect such a big event to happen." "The person who took away Mundus' soul is the last Lumen sage, Baldur. Since you're an Umbra witch, you should know his name." Dante spread his hands. "It concerns the safety of both worlds. We need your help." "Okay, I'll believe you for the time being." Bayonetta raised her head. "Follow me. I'll bring you to the gates of Hell Bar. Rodin is there. If such a big event really happened in the demon world, he should know." With that, Bayonetta stretched out her hand and drew a circle above her head. Along with her hand gesture, a golden magic formation formed. She jumped lightly and entered the magic formation. "That's the exit of the purgatory space, right? Hurry up and follow." Dante called everyone to run over. As expected of a witch, they know how to enter and leave the material world and the purgatory space. After the four of them followed Bayonetta out of the magic formation, although they saw the same scene, the sense of reality told them that they had indeed entered the human world and were no longer in the reflected scenes of the purgatory space. Ignoring the strange gazes of the humans around them, Bayonetta led the four of them forward. After crossing a few streets, they arrived at a subway station. After getting on the subway, they passed through the city and got off of it halfway. After leaving the subway station, they turned into a quiet street. In the corner of this place, Dante and the others finally saw the destination of their trip, a bar with a shabby appearance and the sign Gates of Hell. "Fortunately, this place is in this city." Dante nodded in relief. Bayonetta did not say anything and brought the four, who were looking around, into the bar. The moment they passed through the door of the bar, the four of them felt the existence of a magic barrier. It seemed that it was set to block ordinary humans outside. But for those with magic power, they would not be hindered at all. After passing through the bar's door and walking underground, they finally met the proprietor of the Gates of Hell under Bayonetta's lead. He was a bald black man wearing sunglasses. On his shiny scalp, there were some tribal-like tattoos. He was standing behind the bar counter with a cigar in his mouth, his 10 fingers full of shiny rings, and a large gold chain around his neck. His fierce appearance was full of an unapproachable pressure, but he was making a cocktail. His meticulous and skillful movements were a big contrast to his appearance. When Bayonetta brought Dante and the others in, Rodin did not greet them. Bayonetta looked as though she was used to it and walked to the counter. As soon as she sat down, Rodin finished the cocktail in his hand. He put a green olive in it and handed it to Bayonetta. "Thanks." Bayonetta smiled and took the wine glass. After smelling it, she said in surprise, "Martini? You should change your taste from time to time." Rodin grinned, but his smile looked like that of a fierce bandit. After he finished speaking, he took out a glass of strawberry sundae that he had prepared earlier from the bar and handed it to Dante, who had come in. Looking at the strawberry sundae, Dante was stunned. He was certain that this was the first time he had seen Rodin, but Rodin actually knew what his favorite dessert was. This feeling was too strange. Chapter 466, True Mark. "This is..." Dante held the glass of strawberry sundae and looked at Rodin in confusion. "I've heard of you, Dante." Rodin's deep voice sounded. But under the cover of his sunglasses, his expression could not be seen clearly. "Descendant of the Dark Knight Sparta, child of Taboo, expert in hunting demons. It's our first time meeting. Welcome to the Gates of Hell. This is on me." Dante was a little speechless, but then he raised the glass and said, "Thank you." Then Rodin looked at Virgil, Nero, and Sarath. "What about you? What would you like?" "You know Dante, you know that he likes strawberry sundaes, but you don't know what we like?" Nero asked with interest while walking forward. Rodin took a puff of the cigar between his fingers and exhaled. "Sorry, with all due respect, Dante is the most famous person in the demon world. As for you guys, you haven't reached the level of being famous in the demon world yet." Okay, this reason was very reasonable. Nero was speechless for a moment. He could only ask for 2 mugs of beer for himself and Virgil before sitting down at the bar. "What about me? I want a drink too." Sarath was eager to try. Of course, he knew about the alcohol of the human world, but he had never tasted any before. This time, he finally had a chance. However, Rodin placed a glass of white liquid in front of him. "This is your milk. Brat, didn't your parents tell you? You can't drink underage." PFFT. Looking at Sarath's black face, Dante and the others laughed. "Hey, aren't you a demon?" Sarath said angrily. "A demon still obeys human laws." Rodin took a puff of his cigar and grinned. "Human laws are bullshit to me, but I just don't want you to drink alcohol. Is there a problem?" Sarath had nothing to say. He could not fight Rodin just because he did not want him to drink alcohol, right? So he could only gloomily drink his milk. At the same time, he swore in his heart that he had to grow up quickly. Otherwise, he would always look like a child and not be able to do anything. Only then did everyone finally get to the main topic. Dante said to Rodin, "Since you've prepared the strawberry sundae, did you already expect that Bayonetta would bring us?" Rodin did not answer this question directly. He only grinned and said, "In fact, even if you didn't come here, I would have found a way to get Bayonetta to find you. The movements of the demon world and heaven are so big now that anyone who isn't blind can see them. Of course, I'm no exception." "Rodin, are you saying that I'm blind?" Bayonetta asked in a dangerous tone. "You live in the human world, so of course you don't know these things since it has nothing to do with you," Rodin explained. He then asked Dante and the others, "I heard that Sparta is back?" "Yes." Dante nodded. Demon Osiris saved the old man. He is now the current ruler of the demon world. Rodin tapped his fingers on the counter lightly. "Demon Osiris. To be honest, I've never heard this name before. He shouldn't be from the demon world, right?" "Indeed, he came from the abyss," Dante said. "It's said that it's the true home of demons." "The demons of the abyss. They're becoming stronger and stronger," Rodin sighed. "I know why you're here, but have you thought about it? Now that the spatial channel has opened, the eternal war between heaven and the demon world will break out at any moment. Even if I help you find Mundus' soul and let you capture him, how will this war end? You should know that the war between angels and demons won't stop because Mundus was caught." "I know. As long as the spatial channel is still around, this war can't be stopped unless the channel is sealed again," Dante said. "The reason why my father chose to support Osiris was in exchange for the promise of sealing the channel. Osiris promised my father that after taking back the Ouroboros marks from Mundus, he would let my father seal the channel and end this war." "Is that so?" Rodin rubbed his chin and thought. At this moment, Virgil suddenly asked Rodin, "I heard that you were an angel in the past. Why did you fall and become a demon?" "This has nothing to do with you." Rodin glanced at Virgil. "It has nothing to do with me. But what I'm more curious about is why you care so much about whether this war can end," Virgil sneered. "Are you looking at the problem from the perspective of an angel or a demon? Logically speaking, the war between angels and demons shouldn't have much to do with you, right?" Virgil's words were not polite at all, causing the scene to become a little tense. Rodin snorted coldly. "Humph. What do you know? Do you think this war is only a matter between heaven and the demon world? Wrong. If they're not careful, the entire twin world system, including the human worlds on both sides, will be destroyed." "Is it that serious?" Bayonetta asked curiously. It was not only her. In fact, Dante and the others had always felt that this war was a problem between angels and demons. As humans, they secretly hoped that the angels and demons would fight until both sides suffered heavy losses. This way, at least for a long time, the angels and demons would no longer have the ability to interfere with the affairs of the human world. It was undeniable that the existence of demons had a great influence on the human world in the Devil May Cry world. In the same way, the existence of angels also had a great influence on the human world in the Bayonetta world. These two mythical races had affected the development of humans, and deviations would unavoidably arise. Especially Dante, he had been deeply moved during this time because he felt that Osiris was right. Several disasters in the human world were actually caused by the two brothers. Urizen, who had separated from Virgil, had caused countless human casualties. Sometimes, Dante thought that if they were not half demons or the sons of Sparta and no longer pursued powerful demon powers, and if there were no demons in this world, would these tragedies still happen? If the angels and demons could stop all activities and lie low for a while after the eternal war, it might be a good thing for humans. This was Dante's current thought. But from what Rodin said, it seemed that things were not as simple as they thought. Hearing Bayonetta's question, Rodin nodded. Actually, I can roughly guess what Balder and Mundus want to do. Oh? Tell us about it. Dante and the others sat up straight and waited for the information from Rodin. You said before that Mundus plundered the soul marks of all the demons in the entire demon world, including the new demons from the abyss. Is that so? Rodin asked. Dante nodded. Yes, precisely because of this, Demon Osiris took action to deal with Mundus with my father. Otherwise, there would have actually been no enmity between him and Mundus. This secret technique of plundering soul marks should have been told to Mundus by Balder. Rodin poked the counter with his finger. As a Lumen sage, Balder has the authority to read some of the knowledge of heaven. And this secret technique comes from the Book of Radiance, which is only circulated among ancient angels. Originally, it was a special ritual developed by angels to fight against powerful demon kings. It can condense the soul marks of many angels and allow a high-level angel to obtain a temporary promotion. Wait. Sarath hurriedly asked when he heard this, you mean that angels also have soul marks? Of course. Rodin looked at Sarath strangely. This is common sense. Don't tell me you think only demons receive the protection of the Ouroboros mark? What is the soul mark of angels? Sarath asked curiously. Rodin stretched out a finger and drew a circle in the air. It's very simple. It's the same Ouroboros mark. Huh? The same? Sarath was shocked. How is this possible? I'm not lying to you. It's indeed the same Ouroboros mark. Moreover, if you can see this mark, you'll understand that the Ouroboros marks of angels and demons are completely identical, Rodin said with certainty. This is the first time I've heard this, Dante said in astonishment. Rodin sneered. No angel or demon would talk about the Ouroboros mark everywhere, so humans naturally don't know about this. Moreover, apart from the Ouroboros mark being exactly the same, you probably don't know that this mark contains one of the greatest secrets. What is it? Everyone, including Bayonetta, looked at Rodin and waited for him to explain. In fact, Rodin did not want to reveal it. But looking at everyone's expressions, he felt that if he did not say it, numerous guns would be pointed at his head at the same time. So after thinking about it, he said, this secret is that the Ouroboros marks of angels and demons can be fused together. What? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. How is this possible? Are you saying that angels and demons share the same root and origin? Nero said excitedly. This is ridiculous. Rodin pressed his hands against the counter. I didn't say that. I just said that the marks can be fused. While explaining, Rodin projected a group of light in the air and presented an image of the Ouroboros mark. Look carefully. This is what the mark looks like after fusing. In the light, two small ring-shaped snakes were biting their own tails and slowly spinning. But when the two snakes got close to each other, they unexpectedly untied and changed from biting their own tails into biting each other's tails. Originally, this should have only formed a larger ring, but as the two snakes twisted their bodies, an extremely familiar pattern appeared. This was the symbol for infinity. And its other name was Mobius strip. Chapter 467, The Deceived Mundus. Looking at the two small snakes biting each other and moving slowly, Dante, Virgil, and Bayonetta fell silent. Because they knew that what Rodin said involved the core knowledge and secrets of angels and demons. But what they did not know was that only a special existence like Rodin, who had fallen from an angel to a demon and still retained his original memories, would know the relationship between the Ouroboros mark and the Mobius strip. Other demons or angels might not necessarily know these secrets. The Mobius strip is the name in the human world, Rodin said in a deep voice. Among angels and demons, this mark is usually called a divine spark. It is the embodiment of the will of the world and the gift of the abyss and the Garden of Eden. Only when this mark exists in the soul can angels promote to archangels, and demons can become demon kings. Only when this mark exists can you control authority and become a true god. Then how can we sublimate the Ouroboros mark into the Mobius mark? Sarath asked. In fact, he had actually been memorizing this knowledge since Rodin began speaking and was prepared to tell his foster father when he returned. He knew that Roy had been troubled about how to promote to Demon King for a long time. It was simply impossible for this method of promoting to Demon King to exist in any inherited memories. Now that he had finally met someone willing to talk about it, Sarath certainly would not miss it. Yes, I also feel it's a little strange. Virgil assisted. Since there are Ouroboros marks in the souls of angels and demons, can it be achieved by devouring each other's souls? Humph, how could it be that simple? Rodin said. In order to form the Mobius mark, your Ouroboros mark must first be incomparably solid. This requires you to have an extremely powerful soul and continuously nourish the mark through the power of your soul. It takes a long time to be able to do it. Moreover, you need to obtain the other half of the Ouroboros mark through enemies. Demons need to devour the souls of angels, and angels need to obtain the souls of demons. Although the number doesn't necessarily need to be a lot, it must at least reach a level where the mark is more solid. After absorbing the mark into your soul, you also use your soul power to nourish the two marks at the same time. Finally, after reaching a certain balance, the two Ouroboros marks have the possibility of fusing. Listening to Rodin's narration, everyone felt their scalps tingle. Wasn't this too difficult? No wonder many demons like to devour the souls of angels. They probably want to obtain the Ouroboros mark of angels, right? Sarath said thoughtfully. Not necessarily. Most of it is instinctual, Rodin said. The hatred between demons and angels is the true reason why they devour the other souls. But over hundreds of millions of years, there have naturally been demons who coincidentally achieved the fusion of the Mobius mark. This is also why existences at the Demon King level appeared in the latter era. I understand what you mean. Dante slapped his thigh. The reason Mundus plundered the Ouroboros marks of other demons is that he doesn't want to nourish the mark over a long period of time, so he used this method to achieve it. Is that right? That's right. Rodin nodded. He took another puff of his cigar and spread his hands. Then, you should have figured out the reason why he and Baldur are cooperating, right? It should be that Baldur can provide him with an equally solid angelic Ouroboros mark to help him complete the Mobius mark, which is the condensation of a divine spark, so that Mundus can become a true demon king, Dante said in one breath, but then he said in puzzlement, but here's the problem. Baldur is only a lumen sage. Even if he's an agent of the angels, it's impossible for him to have such a mark. Then, where did his Ouroboros mark come from? Also, Baldur is deliberately helping Mundus. What does he get from Mundus? Yeah, I don't understand either, Nero said. I'm the first to doubt that Baldur is helping Mundus regardless of any returns. He must be able to obtain some benefits. He. Hearing their questions, Rodin could not help grinning. He looked at Bayonetta in front of him and said, I think only Bayonetta can answer these questions for you. Everyone looked at Bayonetta and saw that she was looking down at a crescent-shaped gem at the slit on her chest. She was deep in thought and did not answer immediately. When Dante and the others looked over, they could not help but follow her gaze and look at her chest, so they naturally saw her dazzling, white twin peaks. Nero only took a glance before his face turned red, and he quickly turned his head away. After looking expressionlessly, Virgil turned his gaze to his feet. His right hand clenched into a fist by his mouth, and he pretended to cough. On the other hand, Dandy's eyes lit up, and he almost wanted to whistle, but then he reacted and held back. At the same time, he did not forget to stretch out his hands to cover Sarath's eyes. Why are you covering my eyes? Sarath kicked Dante unhappily. Stop messing around. You're still young. Dante still covered Sarath's eyes and then said to Bayonetta, what a big gem. No, what a round gem. No, what a beautiful gem. What gem is that? In the end, what he got in return was a slap on his stubbled face from Bayonetta. After slapping him, she rolled her eyes at the men. While playing with the gem on her chest with her fingers, she said thoughtfully, this isn't a gem. It's the left eye of darkness. If I'm not wrong, Baldur is probably deceiving that Mundus guy. Huh? What's going on? Everyone was taken aback. It's a long story. Bayonetta let go of the left eye of darkness on her chest, took out a lollipop from a jar beside the bar, peeled off the wrapping paper, and put it into her mouth. While licking it slowly, she said, more than 20 years ago, I woke up from a coffin at the bottom of a lake and found that I had lost my memories. In order to retrieve my memories, I've been wandering around the human world, but I've been constantly attacked by angels. Their goal is to snatch this left eye of darkness on my chest. It was during the confrontation with the angels that I gradually recovered my memories. In addition, I later encountered Jean. She told me that she and I were the only two remaining Umbra witches. The former witches had perished in the witch hunts that the angels instigated humanity to start hundreds of years ago. At this point, there was a trace of confusion in Bayonetta's eyes. I've never thought of avenging my clan, but the angels are still attacking me. I've repelled wave after wave, but there is an endless stream of them. If not for the help of Jean and Rodin, I doubt I would be able to keep persisting. Rodin smiled and made a gesture to Bayonetta that he was willing to for her. Later, through my investigation, I found that there was a mastermind manipulating the angels behind this, and this mastermind is the last Lumen Sage, Baldur, Bayonetta continued. All these years, I've been investigating his whereabouts and goals, and I found that he actually wants the left eye of darkness that is in the hands of the witches. If he obtains it, he can fuse the left eye of darkness and the right eye of light held by the Lumen Sages, allowing the eyes of the world to reappear. And the eyes of the world are said to be the full power of Aesir. Power? Dante and the others fell into deep thought. Yes, power, Bayonetta said. Imagine what the full power of a god will become if you add a Mobius mark. Baldur also wants to become a god. Dante understood and pounded the counter. I get it. No wonder you said that Baldur is deceiving Mundus. It seems like Baldur's true purpose in helping Mundus consolidate his Ouroboros mark is to obtain the final form of this Mobius mark. When he has a divine spark in the power, he will be able to become a true god in one leap. That's what I mean, Bayonetta said. The funny thing is that Mundus is likely kept in the dark. Otherwise, how could he let Baldur take away his soul so easily? Chapter 468, The Disappearance of Sarath. After recalling Mundus's previous actions, even Dante and the others had to admit that what Bayonetta said was probably true. Baldur was deceiving Mundus. Mundus had plundered the marks of other demons, and under the power of the marks, his soul became immortal. Perhaps in his understanding, this was one of the prerequisites for a demon lord to promote to demon king. He thought that what he lacked next was only power and authority, but he did not realize that this mark was only half a divine spark. Baldur might have told Mundus that he would help him become a demon king, but he had concealed the information about the other half of the mark from him. His true goal was to take Mundus's already solidified mark. Out of trust for their past cooperation, Mundus let Baldur escape with his soul. He was probably hoping that Baldur could find an angel body for him to be reborn in, and at the same time, he could abandon his ugly insect-type demon appearance and become a perfect god. Thinking of this, Dante and the others were speechless. They wondered if Mundus's soul would shed tears after knowing the truth. It's likely that Baldur is already thinking of ways to strip the mark from Mundus's soul, right? Nero said. If he succeeds, doesn't that mean that he's only one step away? After hearing Nero's words, everyone could not help but look at Bayonetta's chest and her big gem. We can't let Baldur obtain the left eye of darkness. Dante looked away reluctantly and clenched his fists. We can't let either Mundus or Baldur succeed. Bayonetta, you have to protect this gem. We will do our best to help you. If nothing unexpected happens, I'm afraid she'll be attacked by angels far more than before in the next short period of time. Virgil held your motto and said, we have to help her withstand the attacks. Nero said eagerly, in the other world, I've always been fighting against demons. This is my first time fighting angels. Sarath looked around at the three hot-blooded battle maniacs from the side and finally could not help but say, hey, didn't we say that we wanted to find Mundus? As long as we find Mundus's soul, Foster Father has a way to retrieve the marks. Yes. Dante returned to his senses and scratched his head. This is also a solution. It's also possible to break up Mundus's half of a divine spark. But is it too late? Nero said. What if Baldur has already combined them into a Mobius mark? Then. Sarath's eyes lit up. Just as he was about to say that they might as well give this divine spark to his foster father, he suddenly thought of something and quickly changed his words. That's troublesome. Those demon lords are waiting to get their marks back. Sarath's words gave everyone a headache. This was actually the biggest problem. They finally understood why Rodin said that once this war began, it would not be easy to end. Think about it. If the demon lords could not get their marks back, how could they give up? Moreover, if the fused divine spark could not be broken down and was placed in front of angels and demons, would it cause them to fight for the divine spark? That was the hope of becoming a demon king or an archangel. Dante and the others could already vaguely sense that this war might have the risk of losing control. If they were not careful, it might affect the human worlds of the two twin worlds. Perhaps we should try to find where Baldur and Mundus are first. If we can defeat Baldur before his scheme succeeds, we might be able to avoid the worst from happening," Nero suggested. Dante turned to ask Bayonetta, "Do you know where Baldur might be hiding?" "Maybe in Vigrid. Although Baldur is a Lumen sage, he's actually human. His status in the human world is the CEO of the Ithavoll Group," Bayonetta explained. The Ithavoll Group is a powerful megacorporation, and its headquarters is in Vigrid. If Baldur is still in the human world, then he should be in the Ithavoll headquarters. Then, there's no time to lose. Instead of waiting for angels to come attack while we passively defend, we might as well take the initiative to attack and kill our way into Baldur's lair first. Dante took out ebony and ivory and checked the bullets. He swung the two guns around a few times and inserted them into the back of his waist with a click. "Oh, this style is what I like," Nero shouted. Virgil did not say anything and just silently stood up from his chair with Yamato in hand. "Hey, men." Bayonetta smiled and placed her hands in her hair bun. When she stretched out her arms again, she took out her four guns, Scarborough Fair. She leaned forward with one of her long legs that others could play with for years on the counter. After splitting each leg, she stuck two guns on the heels of her high heels with two clicks and held the remaining two in her hands. Then she placed one hand on her waist and pushed her glasses up with the muzzle of the gun in her other hand. This series of fancy movements was full of enchantment and incomparable temptation, making Nero blush and Dante cover Sarath's eyes again. "Before you leave, I need to remind you." Rodin held his cigar, his eyes hidden under his sunglasses, but his voice was low. "I'm afraid Baldur doesn't necessarily want to become a god himself, so you don't need to focus all your attention on him." "Oh? What do you mean?" Dante asked in surprise. "Because I suddenly remembered a prophecy that was circulating in heaven many years ago," Rodin said. "The general meaning of this prophecy is that if the eyes of the world can be reassembled, Jubileus, the goddess of light who rules heaven, can be resurrected." The angels seemed to believe this prophecy firmly, and it was precisely after this prophecy began circulating that the Lumen sages asked the Umbra witches for the left eye of darkness. At that time, the witches were unwilling to hand it over, which triggered the war between the sages and the witches. After this war, the sages were almost annihilated, and only Baldur was left. "Jubileus? The goddess of light who rules heaven?" Dante asked curiously. "Who is this? Isn't it Aesir who rules heaven?" "No, Aesir was the original ruler. He completely perished in the war in the demon world, and Jubileus is his successor. She was sent from the high-level heaven of the Garden of Eden," Rodin explained. "Moreover, it happened shortly after the angels evacuated to this world. But the strange thing is that Jubileus never appeared again after arriving in heaven here. The angels claimed at the beginning that she had fallen into a long slumber. But judging from that prophecy, something unexpected probably happened when she descended into this world." "Is that so?" The four of them looked at each other in dismay. An archangel who had taken over, a powerful goddess, unexpectedly encountered an accident when descending. This matter was a little unbelievable no matter how they looked at it. In other words, Baldur's search for the eyes of the world and his wish to synthesize a divine spark might not be his own use, but he might want to use it on this goddess who had an accident, right? Nero concluded. Rodin nodded. "That's right. That's why I'm reminding you. If Baldur's plan succeeds, then it's very likely that you'll face a powerful goddess as your opponent, so you have to be careful." "Okay, we'll remember. Thank you for your reminder." Dante nodded. Then he could not help but smile. "Rodin, you really don't seem like a demon." "Humph, it's none of your business." Rodin snorted and continued smoking his cigar. They did not say anything else and left the bar with solemn expressions. After arriving on the street, Dante asked Bayonetta, "How do we go to Vigrid?" "Sit on that." Bayonetta pointed at the sky. Everyone looked up and saw an enormous black shadow floating in the sky in the distance. It was actually a giant airship. After seeing the airship, Dante whistled again. "That looks powerful." Under Bayonetta's lead, everyone set off for the airship airport. But after walking for a while, Dante suddenly felt that something was amiss. He turned around and said in surprise, "Damn it! Where is Sarath?" Nero and the others quickly turned around, only to find that Sarath had really disappeared. "Is this brat lost?" Nero asked anxiously. "Didn't we tell him to follow us?" "Should we go back and find him?" Bayonetta asked. But at this moment, Virgil suddenly said, "There's no need. Sarath left by himself." "You mean?" Dante was stunned. "He should have gone back to find his foster father, Virgil said expressionlessly. Maybe because he heard so many secrets from Rodin, he couldn't wait to go back and tell his foster father. Upon hearing this, Dante had nothing to say. Yes, although Sarath was a half-demon like them, his experiences were different from theirs. Sarath wholeheartedly supported his foster father, Osiris. Regarding this, Dante could not ask too much of Sarath. Forget it. Let's go. It's fine for him to go back and report the situation. After all, the matter with Mundus has exceeded what we originally thought. The demon world also requires information on how to deal with it. Dante finally said, I hope the old man and the others can think of something. Chapter 469, In Heaven. The war between heaven and the demon world broke out. But because both sides were fighting in the purgatory space, the humans of the Bayonetta world did not know about this war. However, this situation would probably not last long. After all, the reflections of some objects in the human world and the purgatory space might be affected as the war expanded. At that time, this invisible power would affect the human world. Many buildings would inexplicably collapse, and some humans might suddenly die. This strange power in the eyes of humans would further deepen their fear. After entering heaven, Roy led a group of demon lords to hold the lines and supervise this new eternal war. Heaven relied on its geographical advantages to defend and counterattack. The vast war spread across tens of thousands of square kilometers, and angels and demons died at every moment. There was no such thing as an intermission. Tens of millions of demons were divided into several waves and continuously poured into heaven to maintain the offensive against the angels. Many angels on the battlefield did not die because they were weak but because of exhausting their stamina and magic power. Although Roy had seen this kind of eternal war once in the Darksider's world, he was one of those being commanded at that time, so he did not understand it very well. But this time, he was observing how demons warred from the perspective of the commander. The insights obtained from different perspectives were completely different. The terrifying and cruel way that the demon army advanced really renovated his understanding again. What kind of concept was 35 million demons? It was an endless tide. In comparison, in Frostfire City, Roy had led tens of thousands of troops to fight against other demon lords, which could only be said to be a small, trifling matter. As he looked at the angels' defense lines being continuously broken under the attacks of the demons, their irresistible force let him realize what powerful influence was for the first time. Being able to command so many demons in wars, it was no wonder that the demon lords wanted to fight Mundus for the position of the ruler of the demon world. The demon world here had existed for a long time, and many demon races that did not exist in the abyss had evolved here. Although most of them were low-level demons with low strength, the battle success was due to the many races. On the other hand, since ancient times, although the angels had improved, they still maintained the appearances of ancient angels. The entire race had not actually developed much. However, he had to admit that these ancient angels were indeed powerful. Although these angels born for war were a little ugly, even low-level angels were existences that could fight a few low-level demons. Although there was the influence of the holy light of heaven, causing the demons to be suppressed, ancient angels definitely had the ability to crush demons in a one-on-one battle. If not for the fact that there were too many demons, and the angels were basically besieged, it was hard to say which side would have had the advantage. The layers of defenses of the angels were constantly being broken. But if you were to look carefully, you would find that the progress of the demons' advance inevitably slowed down as they moved farther forward. This feeling was like a flood being stopped by a dam. However, despite the demons' advancement slowing down, Roy had already achieved his initial goal. The demons now occupied dozens of floating islands. These floating islands formed a part of heaven. In the center of the islands, there was a special magic device used to construct paths of holy light. After all, although angels had wings, it was impossible for them to stay in the air all day long, right? They also needed to land and rest. These paths of holy light connected in series with the floating islands naturally formed the illusory ground for angels to land on. After occupying these floating islands, the wingless demons had a place to stay. The angels actually wanted to destroy these islands. But firstly, the demons' offensive was fierce, and secondly, they did not have enough manpower. So, in the end, they destroyed only a few devices on the floating islands, causing some paths of holy light to collapse. The demons occupied almost all the rest. Leading the wingless demons to push forward on the ground was naturally Inferno Overlord Burial. This big fireball with a demon horn broken off by Roy had finally found a target to vent his anger on. Tens of thousands of flame demons brought from his homeland followed him. With a raise of his hand, countless meteor showers smashed into the angel camp, causing the affected angels to burn and scream. Every time Burial heard these screams, he seemed very happy. Madama Styx flapped her moth wings and flew in the sky. Countless fluorescent powder shining with starlight spread with the wind. The poisonous powder was very lethal to angels. If the poisoned angels were unable to resist the corrosion of the poison, their flesh and blood would melt, their bodies withering in just a few seconds. The demon lords attacked, and the opposing high-level angels did not idle either. Countless arrows condensed from holy light fell from the sky and plunged into the demon army. The demons pierced by the holy light arrows all screamed and twisted desperately. Finally, their bodies turned into flying ashes. In addition to the arrows, there were also huge blades condensed from holy light. These swords of holy light appeared frequently on the battlefield, and every swing would take away the lives of numerous demons. Giant golden ships flew over from the distant sky, and the heads of these ships were actually human faces. They were also one of the ancient angels and were known as kinships, and in the cabins that formed their bodies, they were carrying a large number of angel soldiers. They were the support troops of the angels, and the ones escorting them were two-headed dragon angels with large angel halos on their heads and huge wings on their backs. These two-headed dragons had a large upside-down face on their abdomen. These angels looked really strange. If you put aside the powerful holy light power on their bodies and said that they were demons, people would actually believe it. But no matter how strange they were, these angels were still formidable. Although the demons kept advancing, the casualties were immense. The entire sky of heaven was currently full of countless elemental powers, flames, frost, poison, holy light, and so on. These various elemental powers intertwined with one another and then erupted in both camps, sending countless body fragments and blood flying, creating a tragic scene of an Armageddon war. Just looking at this scene would probably cause ordinary people to fall into endless nightmares for the rest of their lives. Roy was currently riding on Rafaro's body. Regarding the demon body left behind by the Centipede Lord, Roy had not had the time to modify Rafaro. But his nearly 1 kilometer-long body was still massive. The Sky Dragon of Osiris hovered in the sky behind the demon camp. Everyone knew that this was where the command camp of the demon world was. Julia and Benaiah had already merged long ago and summoned Unia to fight on the battlefield. At this time, only Cassandra and Sparta were following Roy. This vast battle scene was too shocking for Cassandra, and it was not the time for her to display her strength. Sparta stayed here because he was a magic swordsman, and he would not be of much use on such a battlefield with large numbers. Moreover, he needed to help Roy coordinate and command. An overly large demon army was not something that a single person could handle. After observing the battle for a while, Roy pointed at the distant sky and asked, "Sparta, that floating island should be the headquarters of heaven, right?" The floating island Roy was referring to was the largest floating island in sight. From where they were, they could only see a long horizon. According to his estimation, this floating island was probably thousands of square kilometers. Sparta nodded. "That should be it. Do you see the enormous tree on the island? That's the Kabbalah, also known as the Tree of Life. Almost every heaven established by angels has this tree planted." Sparta was talking about the enormous tree on the largest floating island. The crown of the tree almost covered the entire island. The height of this tree was equally astonishing, and it appeared lush and dazzling, as though every leaf was shining. It was a tremendous source of light. From afar, only through the gaps of the branches could they see a bit of the trunk. The Kabbalah? Is it the opposite of the Qliphoth? Roy thought of the gigantic tree that Urizen had planted in the human world. Yes, the Kabbalah is bestowment. After planting it, it will continuously release life force and holy light power into the surrounding space. This is also why heaven is always full of light. This is a plant that angels need to transform space. Sparta explained. And the Qliphoth is different. It is a tree of plunder, and it will plunder all the life force in the surrounding space to strengthen itself. Originally, Qliphoths were a plant of the demon world, but in the cruel environment of the demon world, they wouldn't grow well and were malnourished, so you basically can't see such a tall tree in the demon world. Roy nodded. It was fine as long as he understood. Since Sparta said so, then this island planted with the Kabbalah was definitely the headquarters of heaven. Perhaps only that island could be regarded as a true heaven. And Roy's goal was naturally to capture that place. An entire day after the opening of the Eternal War, a small figure appeared. Sarath, who had transformed into his demon form, flapped his flame wings and rushed back. He carefully avoided the places on the battlefield with the most intense fights and circled around to find Roy from behind. He brought back all the information he had learned in the human world. Chapter 470, The Soul of the Goddess? After hearing Sarath repeat what Rodin said, Roy and Sparta were very surprised. "Who is this guy?" Roy asked curiously. "How does he know the secret of Demon King promotion so clearly?" "I suspect that this guy might be a Demon King level demon. Otherwise, it's impossible to explain why he knows this." Sparta spread his hands. "It seems like the waters of the Twin Worlds are quite deep." Roy caressed his demon horns and said thoughtfully, "My domestics and the others know about Demon Rodin. They also said that he used to be an angel, but they don't know why and for what reason he fell. Heaven doesn't seem to have any information about his past, as though someone deliberately erased it." "Foster father, can his words be trusted?" Sarath asked. "It's hard to say." Roy deliberated over his words. If Baldur is really plotting for Bayonetta's left eye of darkness, then what Rodin said should be true. After all, this matter concerns Bayonetta, and his relationship with her isn't ordinary. He should want to help her solve the problem of the Lumen Sage. But the problem is that I don't know how trustworthy his words are. From what you've described, it was too easy to obtain this information. Rodin didn't show the shrewdness that a demon should have. Yeah, he didn't even try to make any transactions. He spilled the beans too easily. Sarath nodded. "This doesn't seem like the behavior of a demon." "It's hard to say if it's true. After all, this guy used to be an angel, so it's normal for him not to be like ordinary demons." Sparta pondered. "We only need to consider if there are lies in his words, and what purpose does he want to use these lies to achieve. The greatest possibility is to trick us into going against the so-called goddess of light Jubileus and then cause both the demons and angels to suffer losses," Roy guessed. "From how he's helped Bayonetta deal with the angels, he doesn't have any good impression of them. But he's also plundered demons in the demon world without restraint, which shows that he hates them as well." Sparta nodded. "Indeed, this is the greatest possibility." "Foster father, what should we do next?" Sarath asked blankly. "We should do whatever we have to do." Roy grinned sinisterly. "Just attack heaven directly. If what Rodin said is true, and Baldur really wants to resurrect the goddess of light Jubileus, then he must come to heaven." "Do you think Dante and the others will end up empty-handed?" Sarath asked. Roy nodded. "It's very likely. Now that heaven and the demon world are currently at war, Baldur definitely won't be able to use the power of too many angels. He might be confident in dealing with Bayonetta alone, but with Dante and the other two half-demons, that's not necessarily the case. So as long as he isn't stupid, he will certainly come to heaven after discovering the appearance of Bayonetta, Dante, and the others. Moreover, the body of Jubileus is definitely in heaven. Logically speaking, he will come here." Sarath sorted out his thoughts and finally came to a realization. "I understand. Foster father, what you mean is that Dante and the others happen to be in the human world and will drive Baldur and Mundus to heaven. We only need to wait for them to come, right?" Roy laughed and stretched out his hand to rub Sarath's red hair. "Go and join the battle. Such a battle is incomparable for the improvement of your strength and combat experience. You just have to be careful not to fight enemies that are too strong." Sarath nodded, took out the scythe executioner, spread his flame wings, and flew forward. This child was smart. He planned to meet Unia first. With Unia's protection, he could kill enemies with peace of mind. After Sarath left, Sparta said worriedly, "If Baldur truly intends to synthesize a divine spark, it'll be a little troublesome. If Dante and the others can't stop the synthesis, can the Ouroboros marks in Mundus's soul still be stripped out? We'll see when the time comes. It's meaningless to consider this in advance. Let's wait until we really get Mundus's soul," Roy said. Sparta sighed. "Okay. In any case, the worst-case scenario is that Baldur's plan succeeds, and Jubileus reappears in heaven. Speaking of which, Osiris, what do you plan to do if she really resurrects? She's an archangel. There's no existence in the demon world that can match her now." "Don't worry. If Jubileus really resurrects, I'll use my trump card." Roy grinned. "What I'm more curious about now is why this goddess of light fell into a long slumber despite being so powerful. What accident happened to her? Who caused her accident? I'm also very curious. To be honest, when I heard Sarath say that this goddess of light was actually the successor of Archangel Acer in heaven, I was shocked," Sparta said. "If not for the accident that caused her to fall into a long slumber, perhaps heaven would have directly counterattacked the demon world. Argisax was heavily injured at that time and would have been unable to resist Jubileus. Yes, it feels like these two twin worlds form a structure with heaven on one side and the demon world on the other, as though someone is pushing it," Roy said thoughtfully. "Could it be?" "What?" Did you think of something? Sparta asked. No, maybe I'm thinking too much. Roy shook his head. Sparta looked at him for a while before finally nodding and did not continue asking. Although Roy was expressionless, he was actually faintly horrified because a name suddenly flashed in his mind just now. Samael. Because of Julia, Roy knew that Samael had come to this world before. But from the mouths of the native demons in the demon world, he found that no demon had noticed that Samael had come. He came and left quietly, only taking one soul and transforming it into the fallen angel Julia. Indeed, the ruler of the demon world at that time was the golden demon Argasax. According to the principle of kings not meeting other kings, it seemed reasonable for Samael to leave quietly. But why did Samael not alarm anyone and only take away a soul? Is there something special about this soul? Previously, Roy had always thought that Samael had picked up Julia's soul when he saw the angels retreat. But now that he suddenly learned that Archangel Jubileus had fallen asleep due to an accident, he had no choice but to let his imagination run wild. Is it possible that the soul that Samael took away was Jubileus's? Logically speaking, it was very difficult for Samael to obtain the soul of an archangel like Jubileus. But what if Samael ambushed her when she had just descended into this world and had yet to gain a foothold? Don't say that it's impossible. The soul of an archangel was definitely worth Samael taking action. If that was the case, then Julia's origin was not simple. She was likely a fallen angel transformed from a portion of the soul of the goddess of light Jubileus. The reason why he said that it was only a portion of her soul was that the strength that Julia displayed was relatively weak. In addition to the fact that her body might not match her soul, it was also possible that her strength was greatly affected because her soul was incomplete. And Jubileus had also fallen into a long slumber due to the sudden loss of most of her soul. It had to be known that having someone taking away this kind of soul and taking the initiative to split your soul yourself was totally different. Even if she could repair her soul, it would probably take a long time. Roy did not know how likely his guess was. But if it was true, then there was a problem that he had to consider. That was how to deal with the souls of Jubileus and Julia. Chapter 471, Helium flash. From what Roy knew so far, he had already realized a situation: don't casually split the soul to create self-aware clones. The demons of the abyss seem to like splitting their souls, either to create weapons or to make clones as helpers. Creating weapons was not too risky since the soul fragments were trapped in non-living bodies, and it was generally very difficult to develop self-awareness. But if they were placed in living bodies, it was highly likely that they would gradually become individual demons over time. The wills of these new demons would not be consistent with their main bodies. They would not think that they were a part of the main body, nor would they have the thought of returning to the main body. Sometimes, they would even think that they were the main body, and the main body was the clone. This situation not only happened with demons but also with angels. This was the current situation for Julia. From the moment she developed consciousness and had memories, she had been staying by Samael's side. Since she did not have her past memories, she had never tracked down where she came from. She only had one identity, fallen angel Julia. If Roy told her at this time that her former identity was the goddess of light Jubileus, perhaps her first reaction would be, how is this possible? From Jubileus's perspective, she definitely wanted to take back the missing portion of her soul. But from Julia's perspective, it was different. She absolutely did not want to merge with her main body again. She would feel that I, Julia, am Julia, and who the heck was Jubileus? Needless to say, if Julia merged her soul back, then Julia would no longer exist in this world, and all her consciousness would utterly perish. How could she be willing? Roy did not know whether there would be a connection between the main body and the clone when they met. If there was such a connection, then the moment Jubileus saw Julia, she might discover her, so he felt that it was best not to let Julia see her. So, what about the other way around? In Jubileus's main body, there should still be a portion of her soul. This portion of the soul was still the holy soul of angels. If Roy could snatch this portion of Jubileus's soul, contaminate it, and complete the degeneration transformation, could he use it to help Julia complete her soul? This was equivalent to reversing the main body and clone completely, turning Julia, the clone, into the main body. Even if Jubileus retained a large portion of her soul, he could try separating it and merging the pieces bit by bit into Julia. In theory, this method was totally feasible. Based on Sparta's situation, he knew that Julia's strength would increase dramatically over time once her soul was complete. At that time, there would no longer be the goddess of light Jubileus, and there would only be the fallen angel Julia. The significance of accomplishing this would be absolutely tremendous for demons. By analogy, it was equivalent to getting the clones of archangels like Gabriel or Michael to fall. When Roy came to this thought, his heart started beating wildly. He was shocked by his own thoughts. This was almost equivalent to having another Lucifer in the abyss. Of course, although an archangel like Jubileus was also an archangel, she was definitely inferior to archangels such as Gabriel and Michael, and she definitely could not compare to Lucifer. But in any case, it was absolutely possible for Julia to promote to Demon King. Roy's eyes flickered as he began to plan carefully. To be honest, even he did not expect that his greatest opportunity when he left the abyss and entered the infinite worlds this time was not in the Devil May Cry world but in the Bayonetta world. If he could really operate this properly, not only would Julia be able to promote to the Demon King level, but he himself also had a great chance of becoming the true Demon King Osiris. Don't forget that Baldur still had a divine spark. In addition, the so-called eyes of the world was obviously something good. If Roy could obtain these two things, then his trip to these two worlds could be considered successful. I have to get them. Roy gritted his teeth, revealing his mouth full of sharp demon teeth. He clenched his fist fiercely, and his eyes were full of murderous intent. Anyone who blocks me is my enemy. With this thought in mind, Roy waved his right hand forward, and Rufaro, who was telepathically connected to him and under his feet, immediately let out a deafening roar that shook the sky. He twisted his long body, bared his fangs, and flew toward the front battlefield murderously. Roy was ready to join the war personally. After approaching the battlefield, immense amounts of magic power poured into Rufaro's body from Roy's feet. Rufaro opened his horrifying jaws and revealed his ferocious dragon teeth as he faced the front of the battlefield. A gigantic black ball of light full of incomparably formidable lightning power and frost power formed in his huge mouth. While this black ball of light was bursting with lightning all around, its outer layer actually displayed a strange multifaceted crystal light. This was Roy's first attempt to combine the powers of dark lightning and dark cold. He now had the 7 elemental powers. But among these elemental powers, apart from the dark element that could fuse well with other elements, the remaining elemental powers were very distinct from each other. This had always been his greatest worry, so he had been trying to merge the elemental powers he had mastered. And dark lightning and dark cold were the two powers that were the easiest to combine in his mind. The yin cold of dark lightning and the ice cold of dark cold could be said to complement each other. Through the amplification effect of Rufaro, the sky dragon of Osiris, as soon as this black ball of light appeared, it attracted the attention of many powerful angels and demons on the battlefield. The stronger the angels and demons were, the more they could feel how terrifying the power contained in this black ball of light was. As the black ball of light continued to expand in Rufaro's mouth, heart-palpitating magic power pressure spread throughout the entire battlefield. The high-level angels realized that they could not let this terrifying black ball of light continue accumulating power, so they desperately broke through the battle lines and rushed toward Roy and Rufaro. However, they were quickly blocked by powerful demons. Madama Styx and the other demon lords realized that Roy was preparing to release a big move, so of course, they had to help him block interruptions. They all attacked, and all kinds of powerful magic shot at the high-level angels. Unia attacked as well. She had appeared many times in this war. As soon as Julia's and Benaya's earrings finished cooling down, they would directly summon Unia to attack again. After all, on such a brutal battlefield, even high-ranked demons could only be regarded as stronger cannon fodder, so they could only get Unia to come out and help. Numerous demons followed the demon lords and blocked the charge of the high-level angels, firmly impeding them on the periphery. Roy and Rufaro patiently finished accumulating power without being disturbed. When they were about to finish accumulating power, Roy roared, "Dodge!" Hearing his shout, Unia, Madama Styx, and the others ignored their opponents and quickly evaded 2 to 3 kilometers away. As soon as they moved away, the black ball of light in Rufaro's mouth erupted. Helium flash. The black ball of light, which had expanded to nearly 100 meters, instantly turned into an enormous beam of light and flew toward where the angels were the densest. The moment the beam of light burst out, the holy light that originally permeated all of heaven seemed to shrink back, and black light filled the entire space. The surrounding companions and enemies disappeared. Be it angels or demons, only the enormous black beam of light remained in their vision. They stared dumbfounded and even forgot to blink as they watched the black beam fly into the battle lines where the angels were. A high-level angel was extremely unfortunate and blocked the path of the beam, so he was the first unlucky one to be hit. The moment the beam hit him, all the accumulated power exploded with a loud thunderclap. The next second, A super thunderstorm that affected nearly 100 square kilometers appeared. Hundreds of millions of lightning bolts flooded this vast area. These lightning bolts interweaved into a large net, and no angel could escape from it. Lightning covered all the angels in this area. However, what was strange was that they were not electrocuted into charcoal by the lightning. Instead, their bodies turned into countless tiny crystal particles, into magnificent and neat frost crystals. Every cell in their bodies was frozen into tiny crystals. Death arrived quietly to these magnificent crystals. With the help of the vast area covered by the super thunderstorm, Roy displayed his frost power to the fullest. Such a killing effect was not something a huge blizzard could compare to. Both the angels and demons had their mouths agape, and they could not close them for a long time. No one knew how many angels had died in this attack just now, nor how many demons had been affected. But a gigantic hole had instantly appeared in the originally dense battlefield, as though it had been bitten off. Before they could come back to their senses, another burst of heart-pounding magic power pressure appeared. When they saw the familiar black ball of light appear in Refaro's mouth again, the angels were finally terrified. "Retreat! Retreat! Retreat to Aesir City!" screamed high-level commanders on the angels' side. Chapter 472, Not the Time. The angels retreated, and their goal was the largest floating island that Roy saw, Aesir City. This city, named after Archangel Aesir, was heaven's last line of defense. As the demon army chased after them, the high-level angels entered Aesir City and activated the protective barrier. A golden light screen spread out from Aesir City and instantly covered an area of tens of thousands of kilometers, enclosing the entire floating island. The golden light screen allowed angels with holy light power to enter without any hindrance. Seeing the angels disappear into the light screen one after another, the demons naturally chased after them. But when the demons touched the light screen, they screamed, and their bodies turned into flying ashes. Even their souls were directly annihilated. This scene made the demons calm down a little, and they no longer dared to charge at the barrier. After the demon lords arrived, the demons began to organize and launch long-range attacks at the barrier in an attempt to break it from the outside. Hundreds of thousands or even millions of magic lights suddenly burst at this moment. Wave after wave came without stopping, but this torrential rain-like magic attack did not cause even the slightest ripple on the barrier. They did not know what the principle of this barrier was, but its strength was unimaginable. The demons bombarded it for more than an hour, but they did not see any signs of the barrier collapsing. However, although this barrier blocked the demon army, it also trapped the angels inside. The demons could not break the barrier, and the angels could not attack from the inside. Apart from taking the time to rest and recover their physical strength and magic power, the angels could only stare at the demons outside through the barrier. Facing this barrier, Roy did not have any good ideas. He could not even be bothered to try attacking it. Millions of demons could not cause any effect on the barrier at all. Of course, he did not think that he could do it alone, so he sent out his trump card, Dark Knight Sparta. All along, apart from swordsmanship, what Sparta was most praised for by demons was his attainments in sealing techniques. And such a barrier could actually be regarded as a kind of sealing technique. The barrier's enormous coverage area was not something that a single individual could achieve, so Sparta guessed that there had to be some kind of large barrier device in Aesir City. Such a device definitely needed an energy supply. If they could break the barrier's energy supply, then it might be possible to break the barrier. The demons used their absolute numbers to surround Aesir City. Sparta led a few demon lords and began to try to break the barrier. The angels inside realized that if this continued, the barrier would break sooner or later, so they had been thinking of ways to save themselves. The most powerful angels in heaven were only seraphim. Although seraphim were formidable, they could at most fight to a draw with the demon lords of the demon world. Their strength was not enough to change the entire war, so the angels placed their hopes on Archangel Jubileus. At the center of Aesir City was the Tree of Life, the Kabbalah. This Kabbalah that had grown for nearly 10,000 years had a trunk that was nearly 30 kilometers thick, and its height was astonishing, comparable to the so-called World Tree of the Elves. At this moment, 7 high-level seraphim with golden angel wings were floating north of the trunk of the Kabbalah. These 7 seraphim jointly released their magic power and opened a spatial channel on the trunk. From this gigantic vortex gate, a statue about 12 meters tall slowly emerged. This majestic statue portrayed the appearance of a female angel. She was wearing exquisite and gorgeous armor, and her shoulder armor, breastplate, and battle skirt were made of long phoenix feathers. The top of the statue had a tall bun, and the braids of her hair hung down like waves, encircling the statue's body. At the top of the statue was a sculpture in the shape of a sun. The blooming light symbolized the identity of this statue. This female angel statue was Archangel Jubileus. After she fell into a long sleep due to her accident, she turned into this statue and hid in the trunk space of the Kabbalah. The angels of heaven initially thought that she would recover her soul and wake up soon. But unexpectedly, nearly 10,000 years passed by in the blink of an eye. The strength of Jubileus's soul is becoming weaker and weaker. After the 7 ancient seraphim took out the statue, they sensed the soul inside and said worriedly, eternal sleep did not allow her to repair the damage to her soul. Instead, as time passed, she has become weaker and weaker. It seems like our plan to get Balder to retrieve the left eye of darkness was right. That's right. As long as we reconstruct the eyes of the world and inject a new divine spark, Jubileus will be able to recover completely and return to her peak state. In this situation, only Her Holiness Jubileus can lead us to counterattack the demons. Now, we just have to wait for Balder to return. I've already prepared a passage. When he enters heaven from the human world, he will directly arrive at Aesir City. The strange-looking seraphim conversed with one another as they placed the statue of Jubileus under the Kabbalah. Time passed little by little. The demons outside were still persevering in attacking the barrier, but Balder, whom the seraphim were waiting for, had still not appeared, making them anxious. Could there have been an accident? It's hard to say. Although Balder is the strongest among the Lumen sages, his enemy, the Umbra Witch, can't be underestimated. It shouldn't be easy to seize the left eye of darkness. What should we do now? Keep waiting. These damn demons came so quickly that we didn't have time to finish the deployment. Now that the connection between heaven and the human world has been severed temporarily, there's nothing we can do except wait. The only good news is that the demons haven't found a way to solve the radiance barrier. While the seraphim were anxiously talking, they saw a long dragon appear in the sky outside the barrier. This long dragon was circling around the floating island where Aesir City was, and there was a tall 6-winged demon standing at the dragon's head. It's Osiris. The seraphim gritted their teeth. Damn it! I didn't expect that not long after his name appeared in the Book of Truth, he came to this world, and we encountered him. However, the seraphim could only curse at this moment and could not rush out to fight Roy to the death. They could only watch him riding the dragon arrogantly and circle above them. Fortunately, there was the dense canopy of the Kabbalah covering them. Looking down from the sky, his vision would be blocked, so the seraphim guessed that Demon Lord Osiris might not be able to see much. Unfortunately, they were wrong. While Roy was riding Rafaro in the sky, he had already discovered something unusual at the foot of the Kabbalah through his radiation perception. In his radiation perception, the statue of Jubileus was an immense source of light. Even the light of the Kabbalah beside her could not cover up the energy radiation emitted by the statue. After sensing the existence of this thing, Roy immediately became vigilant. He knew that he might have found the location of Jubileus. I have to get Sparta and the others to speed up, Roy thought. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he suddenly discovered a few familiar magic power ores inside the barrier below. A golden gate of light appeared inside the barrier, raising the spirits of the seraphim. As expected, the next second, Balder emerged from the gate in a sorry state. The golden half-mask on his face had disappeared, his originally meticulous hair was now in a mess, and his clothes were torn in many places. It was obvious that he had just experienced a great battle. But he was carrying someone in his arms. This person was wearing a tight black leather suit, it was the unconscious Bayonetta, and the left eye of darkness was shining slightly on her chest. The seraphim looked at Balder in surprise, knowing that he had succeeded. But before the seraphim could welcome him, they saw a few figures emerge from the Gate of Light. They were Dante, Virgil, and Nero. They were equally injured, but they still chased after Balder. When Dante and the others appeared, not only was Roy not pleasantly surprised, but he felt his heart skip a beat. Oh no! Chapter 473, Cause and Effect. How should it be put? Dante and the others appeared at the wrong time. Sparta had studied the barrier of Aesir City and came to the conclusion that the reason why the barrier was so astonishing was that the angels might be using the holy light energy stored in the Kabbalah for nearly 10,000 years. In this barrier, although the angels could not come out, this closed system could recycle the holy light energy of the Kabbalah and achieve endlessness. He had just found a clue, and it would still take some time for him to find a way to crack it. But in the end, Dante and the others appeared at this moment. And as soon as they appeared in Aesir City inside the barrier. Now that Roy could not break through the barrier, it was naturally impossible to give them any support. This meant that Dante and the other two would have to face countless high-level angel enemies. In fact, not only was Royce stunned, but Dante and the others who appeared in Aesir City were stunned as well. After seeing Rodin, they had traveled with Bayonetta to the city of Vigrid. After entering Vigrid, Baldur had immediately discovered their traces. The influence of the Ithaval group he founded was unparalleled in this city. So not only were the four of them attacked by angels, but they were also obstructed by humans. Under Baldur's orders, the security forces of the Ithaval group attacked the four of them with all kinds of heavy firepower. Dante and the others broke through the layers of obstructions and eliminated all the obstacles. Finally, they entered the headquarters of the Ithaval group, the Idaval building. Here, they finally saw the mastermind, Baldur. After seeing him, they discovered that Bayonetta was right. He had really deceived Mundus. When the four of them saw Baldur, he had already purified Mundus's soul and extracted the solidified Ouroboros mark in his soul. If Dante could sing it, he would definitely sing a song about Mundus's sad end. Mundus, who had been clamoring to come back for revenge not long ago, could no longer realize his wish. A great demon lord who had ruled the demon world for thousands of years actually died in the hands of a human like Baldur. After obtaining Mundus's Ouroboros mark, Baldur took out the Ouroboros mark that heaven had long prepared for him. Although this mark was only visible but not tangible, like a group of illusory lights and shadows, the sacred furnace from heaven on the top of the Idaval building could use holy flames to fuse the two marks into one. When Dante, Bayonetta, and the others arrived, they happened to witness the process of Baldur holding up divine flames and see the two Ouroboros marks decomposing and reforming together into a colorful Mobius mark. When Baldur fused the divine spark, it was already too late for them to stop him. In the end, the only thing they could do was defeat Baldur and prevent him from bringing the divine spark to heaven. Thus, a great battle broke out. The main characters of the battle were the three half-demon children of Taboo plus an Umbra witch versus Lumen Sage Baldur. When Baldur appeared in the demon world earlier, he did not dare to fight Roy and Sparta, so he had retreated with Mundus's soul. But this did not mean that Baldur was weak, but because the demon world was not his home ground. But now, in the human world and the city of Vigrid, it was Baldur's home ground. Dante and the others finally saw the strength of the strongest Lumen Sage. With the mighty power of holy light and the terrifying power of psychokinesis, Baldur, who had spread his peacock wings and soared in the sky, was comparable to a seraph of heaven. But what was most against the rules was that he could actually mobilize the satellites of the Ithaval group. They were several military satellites equipped with space-based weapons systems. These space-based weapons could attack Dante and the others from tens of thousands of meters in the sky following Baldur's orders. The crimson high-energy laser beams arrived almost instantaneously, and they were hit before they could even react. During the battle, Dante, Virgil, and Nero were all hit by high-energy laser beams. In the worst case, half of Virgil's body was burned away. If not for the powerful recovery ability of his demon bloodline, Virgil would have died. Fortunately, although the high-energy laser weapons were powerful, they were only point-to-point attacks with a small coverage area. After suffering a few losses, Dante and the others learned how to deal with them and continuously maintained their mobility, never stopping. This forced Baldur to give up on using the laser weapons to attack them. Among everyone, the only one who could dodge the high-energy laser attacks was Bayonetta. Like Baldur's Sage Time, Bayonetta could also enter Witch Time. After entering Witch Time, the flow of time around her would slow down, and only she remained unaffected in any way. This ability stemmed from the left eye of darkness she wore. Archangel Aesir was hailed as the god of chaos by heaven. He was the observer and monitor of the history of the world. The power of time might be his authority, and the eyes of the world condensed from all his power after his death naturally had the ability to control time. The left eye of darkness and the right eye of light after the eyes of the world separated also inherited this ability. It was Sage Time and Witch Time. After Dante and the others failed to keep up with Baldur's movements and could not resist his Sage Time, Bayonetta became the main force in the fight against him. But during the battle, Baldur kept talking and revealed another secret: Bayonetta was actually his daughter. Bayonetta, whose original name was Sarath, was a child of Taboo born hundreds of years ago after Baldur fell in love with the Umbra witch Rosa. Although the Lumen Sages and the Umbra witches each controlled a piece of the eyes of the world, the two clans were not allowed to marry each other because they were worried that they would lose the ability to control the eyes of the world after the bloodlines mixed. As a result, after Baldur and Rosa gave birth to a child, it naturally triggered a confrontation between the two clans. Sarath was placed in the care of an Umbra witch family to raise, and Baldur was no longer allowed to see her. Originally, if this had been all, it might not have been a big deal. But coincidentally, during the confrontation between the two clans, Heaven had begun to plan to resurrect goddess Jubileus, so they wanted to take back the eyes of the world. The Lumen sages, as the representative of the angels, naturally had no problem, but the witches refused to hand over the left eye of darkness. As a result, Heaven began to plan to use force to take back the left eye of darkness. The angels decided to use the power of humans and instigated them to initiate the witch hunts, causing the witches to suffer heavy losses. Finally, they ordered the Lumen sages to take the left eye of darkness. In the end, for some reason, the Lumen sages were instead defeated by the witches. The result of the war was that only Balder remained of the Lumen sages, and the witches only had Sarath and Jean left. As for Sarath's mother, Rosa, she was killed in the war. Finally, Balder, who had lost his beloved, went mad. He realized that the so-called balance between light and darkness was nothing more than a lie. The opposition of light and darkness would only bring more disputes. Only by using unparalleled power to unify and rebuild the world of the Trinity of Realities could this conflict be resolved. Then, from the initial passive acceptance to active integration, Balder put on the golden half-mask, sealed his feelings, and began to participate actively in Heaven's plan to resurrect the goddess of light Jubileus. He even did not hesitate to attack his own daughter to seize the left eye of darkness. In the end, Sarath's good friend, Jean, hit her at the critical moment, hiding her for 500 years. Thus, Balder's plan to seize the left eye of darkness had to be delayed for 500 years. And because the soul of Jubileus had been weakening, just having the power of the eyes of the world was not enough. Heaven also had to replenish her weakening soul. So during the 500 years of the plan being shelved, Heaven asked Balder to find a way to contact a powerful demon who had come from the demon world more than 2,000 years ago and told him that this demon was a pawn that Heaven was reserving for future use. Needless to say, this powerful demon was naturally referring to Mundus. In fact, Mundus had already entered the pit more than 2,000 years ago. Heaven had taught this demon, who desperately wanted to become a god, how to condense the Ouroboros mark. But because Sparta sealed Mundus later, Mundus lost contact with them. The angels could not go to the demon world, so they could only send Balder, a human, to contact Mundus. After Balder found an opportunity to go to the demon world, he saw Mundus, who was still sealed, and brought him a promise from Heaven. He told him that once he escaped from the shackles of the seal, he could help him become a true god. Perhaps it was because Balder had been lonely for many years, but after seeing his daughter again, he told the four of them everything while fighting them, leaving them dumbfounded. After listening to Balder's story, Bayonetta completely recalled all her memories from before she was hidden. But unlike what Balder had imagined, after learning that Balder was her father, she did not have any intention of helping him fulfill his wish. In her opinion, Balder was also being deceived by Heaven. Unifying the Trinity of Realities sounded good, but it was nothing more than resurrecting Jubileus to counterattack the demon world. Regardless of whether it was the demon world attacking or Heaven attacking, it was still ultimately war. In the end, the unlucky ones would likely be the human worlds on both sides. In order to stop Balder's delusions, Bayonetta attacked with all her might without hesitation. With the cooperation of Dante and the other two, she successfully defeated Balder and shot a lipstick bullet with powerful magic power into the center of his forehead. They originally thought that it would end like this, so the four of them relaxed a little. Unexpectedly, when they were about to leave, Balder actually appeared again. Taking advantage of the moment when Bayonetta fell into grief from thinking that she had killed her father with her own hands, he sneak attacked her and knocked her unconscious. Then before Dante and the others could react, he carried Bayonetta, flew into the sky, and entered a golden gate of heaven that had just opened. In a moment of desperation, they chased after him into the gate of heaven. As soon as they passed through the spatial channel, they saw the densely packed ancient angels around them. What should we do? If we go back now, can we still escape? Chapter 474, Resurrected Goddess. Seeing the angels all around them, Dante, Virgil, and Nero subconsciously stood back to each other and raised their guns vigilantly. But this action naturally aroused the displeasure of the angels. The angels around them immediately held their weapons and surrounded them, looking eager to try. Dante looked up and saw the sky dragon of Osiris behind the golden light screen in the sky. He knew that Roy was definitely on it, so he quickly shouted, "Hey, what's going on?" Roy did not say anything and looked down at him speechlessly, letting him realize it for himself. After returning to heaven, Balder finally felt much safer. Although he looked disheveled, he still calmly said to Dante and the others, "Stop struggling. Can't you see how powerful this barrier is? Your father and those damn demons can't attack now. How did this happen? Nero's forehead was full of cold sweat. He gulped and looked into the distance. As expected, through the gigantic membrane of light, he saw the dense army of demons outside. I really admire you. Who gave you the courage to follow me into the gate of heaven? Balder held Bayonetta in his arms and sneered. Did you think you wouldn't die? Dante did not say anything. In this situation, he could not afford to provoke any more trouble, so he could only temporarily put away his usual frivolous attitude. But while observing the surroundings, Dante could not help but look up at Roy outside the light screen and was stunned. Due to the distance, he could not see too clearly. He seemed to see Roy pressing down with both palms. Dante quickly understood what Roy meant and realized that he was telling them not to act rashly. Yes, in this situation, be it their father, Sparta, or Osiris, they were both far away and could not help at all. If they still tried to resist in the face of so many enemies, it would be courting death. It was better to surrender for the time being and save their lives first. Thinking of this, Dante threw his demon sword onto the ground and spread his hands. Okay, Balder, you win this round. Virgil and Nero instantly reacted. Although they were unwilling, they followed Dante's example and abandoned their weapons, giving up resisting. A very smart choice. Balder was silent for a while before nodding. I thought you would choose to be purified by holy light. The surrounding angels rushed forward and pressed down the three of them. Golden holy light formed shackles on their limbs and restrained them. Balder turned to a seraph beside him and said, Your Excellency Arclando, fortunately, I did not fail my mission and brought back the left eye of darkness. This seraph named Arclando was a mighty and fierce-looking angel. He was wearing ornate golden armor and had a scarlet cloak on his back. His 6 golden flame-like wings were flapping slightly behind him. But what was strange was that his body was like a headless knight, with no head in sight. He held the holy sword in his right hand and a shield with a sun-like pattern in his left. On the shield, there was a human face. It was Arclando's face. After hearing Balder's words, Arclando raised his shield slightly and brought his face up to his neck. Then his face revealed a happy expression and grinned. Good job, Balder. Let's not delay any longer and immediately start waking up Her Holiness Jubileus. Balder nodded, and the 7 seraphim led him to where the statue of Jubileus was. Before leaving, Balder looked up at the sky and found that the long dragon flying in the sky had disappeared. Roy left. After instructing Dante and the others to surrender, he realized that the resurrection of Jubileus might already be a foregone conclusion, so it was useless to stay here. The demons had to consider how to deal with it now, so he left. Dante and the other 2 noticed this, but they did not know when Roy left. They could only think that he was cold-hearted while being escorted by the angels to the statue of Jubileus. After Balder's return, the angels had become full of confidence and were no longer afraid. They looked forward to seeing Jubileus waking up and leading them to victory. So before that, they planned to let these 3 children of Taboo feel the majesty of the goddess of light Jubileus up close. When they arrived under the trunk of the Kabbalah, Dante and the others finally saw the appearance of the so-called goddess Jubileus. They could only look up at this towering statue. Many angels were gathered here, but only the 7 seraphim and Balder could approach the statue. When the resurrection ritual began, Balder stood in front of the statue with Bayonetta in his arms. He did not move at all as his body emitted the light of magic power and slowly floated up. When he floated near the face of the statue, the right eye of light on his chest radiated bright light. A group of 7 colored lights emerged. It was the Mobius mark that he had stored in the right eye of light. After appearing, the Mobius mark slowly flew toward Jubileus's glabella and then merged into the statue. Under the gazes of countless watching attentively, after a short period of calm, the statue of Jubileus suddenly began to tremble slightly. This trembling gradually became greater and greater. At the same time, the statue grew taller at a visible speed, growing from about 12 meters to about 20 meters. It's effective. It's really effective. Seraph Arclando looked at the statue excitedly. In fact, when Jubileus first fell into a long sleep, the statue she transformed into was at this height. But as her soul weakened, the statue became smaller. Arclando and the others had studied this phenomenon for a long time before coming to a possible conclusion. They believed that when her soul was damaged, her divine spark also sustained damage, causing her soul to be unable to heal on its own. The divine spark that Balder brought back was to make up for and repair her original divine spark. When the statue of Jubileus returned to its original height, the angels sensed her soul began to strengthen gradually, indicating that everything they did was useful. Quick, Balder, Arclondo shouted. "Quickly fuse the eyes of the world and let the goddess awaken." Balder lowered his head and looked at Bayonetta in his arms. After sighing slightly, he gently tossed her upward. Bayonetta's body emitted black light. It was the light from the left eye of darkness in front of her chest. After her entire body slowly floated to the left eye of the statue, she began to merge into it. Balder himself emitted white light as the right eye of light activated, and he dived into the right eye of the statue. After Balder and Bayonetta merged into the stone eyeballs, the eyeballs suddenly turned transparent, from the original stone into a watery texture. Balder and Bayonetta stood quietly in the eyes of the statue. The light radiating from their bodies made the statue's eyes look black and white and extremely strange. "Come back, Your Holiness Archangel Jubileus." The seraphim below, including the countless ancient angels on the periphery, were all kneeling on one knee and bowing in worship to the statue. "In the name of holy light, the glory of heaven shall bloom because of you." Buzz. A faint sound came from inside the statue. In the statue of Jubileus, the right eye of light on Balder's chest and the left eye of darkness on Bayonetta's chest resonated together. Endless light spread throughout the statue's entire body. This light became stronger and stronger and finally formed an incomparably dazzling beam of light that shot into the sky. The beam of light passed through the dense and resplendent leaves of the Kabbalah and finally hit the top of the domed barrier. Then it continued bombarding the barrier. Kacha! The barrier that countless demons could not break earlier unexpectedly cracked under the impact of the light beam. The angels heard the sound of the barrier shattering, but they did not panic because this was already within their expectations. When the eyes of the world fused, it needed to vent energy, and this immense energy was bound to break the entire barrier from the inside. But since Jubileus had resurrected, it did not matter to the angels if there was a barrier. In the endless light, the statue of Jubileus actually moved. She slowly closed her eyes, and the moment her eyes closed, Balder and Bayonetta disappeared from her eyes. The moment Jubileus opened her eyes again, all the rock layers on the surface of the statue collapsed, and a graceful, tall body broke out of the statue. A lazy murmur echoed throughout the entirety of heaven. Chapter 475, A Simple Matter of Breathing. Not only in heaven, but at this moment, in the entire human world adjacent to it, this lazy murmur rang in the ears of billions of humans. People raised their heads and looked around in puzzlement, thinking that they were hearing things. Outside the floating island of Aesir, the demon army, which had withdrawn hundreds of kilometers under Roy's command, was trembling. All the demons saw the beam of light that soared into the sky and the faint pressure that came with it. This pressure was not fierce, and it was not a feeling that forced the demons to kneel. But the more faint this feeling was, the more uncomfortable the demons felt because they knew that this pressure was not directed at them but merely emanating unconsciously. All the demons understood that a natural enemy so powerful and terrifying that it made them despair had appeared. The high-level demons were still able to maintain their rationality under this pressure and did not turn around to escape, but the low-level demons could not do this. The moment this faint pressure spread throughout all of heaven, countless low-level demons were already wailing and fighting to escape to the spatial channel with their tails between their legs. Even though the demon lords were berating them unceasingly, they could not stop these deserters at all. Toward the end, the demon lords no longer cared and simply let them go. Anyway, these low-level demons were useless in this situation. At this moment, Sparta, Burial, Madame Styx, and the other demon lords all came to Roy's side and asked him uneasily, "Osiris, what should we do? Archangel Jubileus has really awakened. We have no chance of winning. It might be too late to retreat now." "Retreat to the demon world?" Roy looked at them and sneered. "And then wait for the angels to come knocking? This. We can stall for time," a demon lord said embarrassedly. "Moreover, after returning to the demon world, we can escape back to the abyss if we really can't. Sparta is here. Get him to undo his seal. I've been out for so long. It's time to return to my hometown and have a look." "Yes." Burial and the others nodded. "I miss the sulfur aura of the abyss a little. It's purer than the demon worlds." Sarath rolled his eyes when he heard this. These guys were really shameless. Even a child like him could not stand it anymore. "Anyone who wants to leave can leave," Roy said expressionlessly. "But let me say this first. If you leave and return to the abyss, then the demon contract between us will become invalid. What happens to your Ouroboros marks will then have nothing to do with me. Got it?" This. Burial and the others hesitated when they heard this. Without their Ouroboros marks, even if they returned to the abyss, they would not dare to wander around in the future because it would be too dangerous. Once they died, they would not even have the chance to resurrect. They were unwilling, but the pressure exuding from the goddess of light Jubileus in Aesir City was making them break out in a cold sweat. A demon lord thought about it and gritted his teeth as he made a decision. Escape. If the demon contract became invalid, then so be it. If they could not get their marks back, then so be it. If they fought the Archangel here for their Ouroboros marks, they might be killed before they could retrieve their marks. If they escaped back to the abyss, they could at least save their lives for a while. Everyone understood this choice, so after the demon lord who took the lead left, the other demon lords followed. When they made this decision, the demon contract they signed with Roy appeared and burned out. Humph. If I had known they would become deserters, I would have kept the penalty for breach of contract. Roy snorted unhappily and looked at Burial and Madama Styx. What about you? After some hesitation, Burial and Madama Styx decided to stay. Madama Styx forced a smile. To be honest, I know that this decision is very risky. But since you're staying, Lord Osiris, it means that you're still confident. I also want to see what your trump card is. Okay. Roy nodded. Then wait. With that, Roy looked at Julia next to him. After Jubileus resurrected, Julia's condition was a little off. She kept looking at the beam of light in Aesir City with a confused and dazed expression. Julia, what's wrong? Roy hugged her and asked softly. I don't know. Or rather, I can't say exactly, Julia said. I keep feeling that there's a very special throbbing in my heart, and the source of this throbbing is that light. My body seems to be resonating with it. Darling, what's wrong with me? Roy sighed. He knew that his previous guess really came true. Julia's soul really came from the goddess of light Jubileus. Therefore, he did not hide it from her. He whispered his guess to her, causing her eyes to widen. You're saying that Samael used Jubileus's soul to create me? Julia exclaimed incoherently. Then am I not merely a clone of Jubileus? It's not certain who the clone is. Roy patted Julia's back and comforted her. Have you ever thought about what if you're the main body? What do you mean? Julia did not understand. I mean, maybe you're the biggest portion of Jubileus's soul. Roy smiled. Samael might have only left a small portion of her soul. In that case, aren't you the main body? I don't know. Julia's face was in a mess, which was a display of her questioning her self-cognition. Roy could only comfort her and tell her not to think too much. Finally, under his persuasion, Julia agreed to leave heaven for the time being because she knew that since she could sense Jubileus, Jubileus should be able to sense her. If she were to remain in heaven, Jubileus might first act against her. Roy was about to face a godlike archangel, so he did not dare to be careless. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, he got Julia and Benaiah to leave with Cassandra and Sarath and return to the demon world. After they left, he would be able to act freely. Thus, only a few demon lords were remaining at the scene. The most determined one was Sparta. After all, Dante and the others were currently in the hands of the angels, and he had to save them no matter what. Of course, there were also many high-level demons remaining, but the deterrence of an archangel was actually so terrifying that the morale of the demons have completely collapsed before they even met. The demon army of tens of millions was now only a few 100,000. The ones closest to Jubileus were Dante and the others in Aesir City. At this moment, the three of them were facing her directly. When they saw that this giant goddess had regained her vitality, the stimulation they received was unparalleled. In their vision, Jubileus was as dazzling as a blazing sun. After the murmur dissipated, the light on Jubileus gradually disappeared, so Dante and the others could see her true appearance. Jubileus was wearing revealing dark golden armor. This armor looked like it was made of countless feathers and was extremely gorgeous. Several braids hung down from her hairline around her body like waves, and at the end of each braid was a cross-shaped flower ornament. In the center of the petals were faces with joyful expressions. She did not have 6 wings as imagined. Behind her was only a pair of wings, but they were a pair of indescribably enormous wings of light that covered the sky and almost enveloped most of Aesir City. These wings of light were more like decorative emblems than wings. The bright golden light formed complicated patterns, and only the outermost lines were visible as the outline of the wings. At Jubileus's eyes, she was wearing a mask made of feathers, covering half of her face. Her black and white eyes shone with a dignified gaze through the mask. On her forehead, a golden round light was shining, like a third eye. This round light eye was slowly rotating and emitting incomparable power. And this eye was the eyes of the world. After waking up, Jubileus crossed her arms in front of her chest and took a deep breath. This was her first breath after sleeping for thousands of years. As she breathed, The golden holy light of the Kabbalah shining and spreading throughout all of heaven seemed as though it was being sucked into a vortex. And all of it rushed toward her. After inhaling a large amount of holy light, Jubileus placed her right hand in front of her mouth and gently blew out a breath. With this breath, endless golden holy flames instantly formed and rushed out of Aesir city, heading straight for the demon army. The next second, the holy flames swept over like a tsunami and swallowed the high-level demons who had been brave enough to stay. Countless demons let out earth-shaking screams and turned into ashes without even causing a ripple. After a while, after the tsunami of holy flames passed, only Roy and the demon lords were left floating alone in the sky of heaven. After waking up, the goddess of light Jubileus merely took a breath and killed hundreds of thousands of demons. Chapter 476, Fighting the Archangel. Roy and Sparta could not help but gasp. They could also eliminate an army of hundreds of thousands of demons, but it was a little too exaggerated to kill all of them with just a breath like Jubileus. When the tsunami of golden flames attacked just now, Roy and Sparta had raised magic power shields to protect themselves. But in just a short while, they felt nearly half of their magic power had been consumed. The holy light power contained in the flames was astonishingly rich. Whether in quality or quantity, this holy light far exceeded their imagination. Roy was now a little glad that he had not let Julia and the others stay. Otherwise, facing such powerful holy light, it would have been difficult for them to resist it with their current strength. At that time, even if they did not die, they would have suffered serious injuries. Burial, Madame Styx, and the others were bewildered and uncertain. To be honest, they had stayed here without considering the strength of an archangel. They rarely had the chance to face an archangel head-on, and they did not want to miss this opportunity to understand the enemy's strength. But Jubileus's attack just now made them feel a little regretful. How terrifying. Did we make the wrong choice in staying? With this thought in mind, Burial, Madame Styx, and the others could not help but look around, wanting to leave a way out for themselves. The current situation had become a little awkward. Earlier, no matter how hard the demons tried, they could not break the shield of Aesir city. But now that the shield had collapsed from the inside, the demons had no troops left, and only Roy and the other demon lords remained. Now, they really appeared too few and too weak. Be careful, Osiris. Only Sparta held his sword tightly and reminded Roy. She's coming. After eliminating the demon army around Aesir, Jubileus did not pay attention to the ancient angels beside her. Her huge wings of light flapped gently, spurring her gigantic body out of Aesir city and toward Roy and Sparta. The boundless light wings almost covered all of Roy's and the others' vision. Jubileus's enormous body appeared so uncoordinated in front of this pair of light wings. After flying close to them, she stopped and crossed her palms on her chest. Under the gorgeous ball mask on her face, only her cold and indifferent eyes were revealed, looking emotionless, empty, and terrifying. Looking at Jubileus up close gave Roy and the others even greater pressure. When Roy had encountered Gabriel and Raphael, he did not feel too strongly about the archangel level. After all, he was relatively weak at that time, so he could not feel much and only felt crushing pressure. But now that he was a powerful demon lord and facing Archangel Jubileus, he realized how terrifying the power of this level of existence was. Just by looking at her, Roy could feel the turbulent, endless magic power surging in her body. This magic power had exuberant vitality, conveying the charm of endlessness. Moreover, this was only the external feeling. The magic power in Jubileus's body was probably even more astonishing. Roy felt that after reaching Jubileus's level, a mere numerical value alone could not describe how immense her magic power was because it was meaningless. Her magic power had reached the point of being able to circulate forever. To put it simply, it was not excessive to call it infinite magic power, just like the meaning of the divine spark represented by the Mobius strip. Facing the pressure brought by Jubileus, Roy and the other demon lords could not help breaking out in a cold sweat. If not for their pride as lords supporting them, the two weakest demon lords would have even wanted to turn around and escape. At this moment, Jubileus's head turned slightly and looked at Madame Styx. When that cold and empty gaze looked at her, Madame Styx shivered and subconsciously screamed. She thought that Jubileus was going to attack her. But unexpectedly, after looking at her, Jubileus looked away and said in a quiet voice, "Not you. Where did you go?" Hearing her, Roy was stunned for a moment before immediately understanding. Jubileus was looking for Julia. When she woke up earlier, she should have sensed the soul connection between Julia and her, which was the moment when Julia was absent-minded. But then, under Roy's request, Julia left heaven and returned to the demon world. At the same time, It blocked the soul induction between both sides, causing Jubileus to be unable to find Julia. And the reason Jubileus flew over at this moment and looked at Madama Styx was that she knew that her soul fragment clone should also be female. Madama Styx was the only female among the demons present, so she naturally investigated her first. Unfortunately, Madama Styx was not the person whom Jubileus was looking for. Next, Jubileus swept her gaze across Roy and the other demon lords in turn. After discovering that none of them was the one she was looking for, she raised her head, flapped her wings slightly, and flew over their heads. And in front of her was naturally the direction of the spatial channel. She seemed to realize that her soul fragment had passed through the channel and left heaven, so she wanted to chase after it. As for Roy and the other demon lords, Jubileus regarded them as nothing. This contempt finally angered the demon lords. At this moment, their pride in being demon lords completely overwhelmed their fear of the archangel. Burial was the first to roar, and raging flames instantly ignited his entire body. He roared angrily, condensed a long flame spear in his hand, and threw it at Jubileus's heel. This flame spear sounded the horn for the demon lords to attack Jubileus. The demon lords spread their wings and attacked with their strongest moves. Yes, the god-level archangel was indeed terrifying, but demon lords represented the high-end forces of the entire demon world. Even if they could not defeat her, they had to fight to know. Boom! The flame spear exploded on Jubileus's heel and erupted into destructive flames. But it failed to injure her at all. Madama Styx flapped her moth wings and flew up to Jubileus's face in a strange and ethereal way. Then poisonous black powder swept toward Jubileus like a tornado, covering her entire face. Meanwhile, Sparta held his demon sword and jumped into the air. The light of a magic formation flashed under his feet, allowing him to step on the magic formation and jump up again. After 2 consecutive jumps, he arrived behind Jubileus. The demon sword in his hand turned into red light as he instantly stabbed hundreds of times at the same point in an attempt to break through her defense and pierce through her heart from behind. However, the attacks of Madama Styx and Sparta were ineffective. It seemed that the poisonous black powder was blocking Jubileus's vision, so with a wave of her hand, she raised a large storm and blew away the powder. The strong corrosive powder could not even make her skin rough. Sparta's demon sword pierced a large hole in Jubileus's back. But at her level, she no longer had any physical weaknesses. In the big hole that Sparta stabbed, countless golden rays of light could be seen, and the hole quickly closed under the holy light. But Jubileus did not even frown. Her body was a pure body of light elements, and her appearance displayed in the eyes of the outside world was merely a superficial layer. Facing the siege of the demon lords, Jubileus slowly spread her hands that were protecting her chest, and her arms hung down flat on both sides of her body. Under the gorgeous ball mask, her eyes suddenly erupted with dazzling light. The next second, within a radius of nearly 20 kilometers around her, a holy storm so strong that it caused all of heaven to tremble erupted. Endless holy light spread out in heaven, surging back and forth. The powerful holy light power formed a mighty torrent that intertwined and spread in all directions, scouring everything around it within 360 degrees without any blind spots. No one in this range was spared. Burial, Madama Styx, and the other demon lords screamed as they were swept into this holy storm. Burial's body was the largest, so he suffered the most attacks from the holy light. Under the strong impacts of the holy light, the flames on his body were suppressed to the point of extinguishing, and his pitch-black body was riddled with holes. Madama Styx and the others were not much better. The storm swept them hither and thither, making them dizzy, and smoke began to rise from their bodies. Sparta was smart. He grabbed one of Jubileus's braids tightly. With the support point, he avoided the tragedy of being swept away. But even with his strenuous persistence, he was almost at his limit. As for Roy, he suffered the least damage in this holy storm. He poured magic power into Refaro's body under his feet and used Refaro's magic power amplification effect to create an incomparably enormous magic power shield. Seeing that most of their bodies were enveloped in it, Refaro roared and rushed forward with all his might under the support of the magic power shield. After arriving in front of Jubileus, the 3 pairs of demon wings on Roy's back suddenly glowed, and his speed reached its limit in an instant. His body disappeared. The next moment, Roy held Frostmourne tightly with both hands and ferociously stabbed the tip into the third eye shining on Jubileus's forehead. Chapter 477, Time Reversal. The reason Roy chose to attack the third eye between Jubileus's forehead was that he knew that this eye was the manifestation of the divine artifact the Eyes of the World, and it was the source of her immense magic power. Moreover, this eye should be an external object to her. After all, The original owner of the Eyes of the World was Archangel Aesir, and she was only using this divine artifact to make up for the loss of her original strength. Currently, Roy did not know what weaknesses she had, so choosing to attack this eye was the best choice. However, Roy's sudden stab with 64-fold strength failed to pierce this eye. When he was about half a meter away from the shining eye, an invisible force blocked the tip of Frostmourne. He gritted his teeth and increased his strength with all his might, but this invisible force barrier subtly maintained resistance equivalent to Roy's strength, preventing Frostmourne from advancing at all. Roy could only let go of one hand and press his left hand against the eye. When he felt the invisible barrier on his palm, he immediately activated Dark Cold and tried to freeze it with magic power. Cracking sounds came. From Roy's hand, black ice crystals began to spread along the outline of the invisible barrier. But what he did not expect was that just as the ice crystals spread out in an arc, they began to shrink the next second before finally retracting back into his palm. Roy was shocked because he did not feel any heat coming from this eye, but his ice disappeared just like that. This feeling was as though his magic power was neutralized. He wanted to test if the other elements would also be neutralized, but Jubileus no longer gave him a chance. Her fluttering braids all around curled and danced, closing in on her forehead from all sides. The target was Roy. Clang. Roy could only raise his hand and use Frostmourne to block these enormous braids flying over. The tips of the braids hit Frostmourne's blade with tremendous force. In the air, Roy could not offset this force and was sent flying, turning into a meteor in the sky. Seeing things going wrong, Rufaro immediately twisted his body and waited on the path Roy was sent flying, planning to use his body to catch him. Roy slammed into Rufaro's body and stopped. He finally stabilized his body and could not help cursing. Damn it! Although it was only a short attack, Roy had already noticed one thing. The Eyes of the World had the same resistance to physical and magic power attacks. It was quite troublesome, but it seemed to be only passively defending and would not counterattack. The attack with the braids just now was Jubileus's own consciousness. In other words, although Jubileus had used the power of the Eyes of the World to restore her strength, she seemed to be unable to guide and drive the Eyes of the World to attack. Roy guessed that this might be because she had just merged with the Eyes of the World. As time passed, it was hard to say whether she would be able to activate the power of the Eyes of the World. She's already so powerful now. What will happen if she can use the power of the Eyes of the World? Roy thought. In the holy storm that erupted just now, only Roy and Sparta had narrowly escaped, while Burial, Madame Styx, and the others were heavily injured. Although they did not fall from the sky of heaven, they were barely maintaining their flying. Their bodies were all emitting smoke from the holy light burns, and their skin seemed to have melted as they screamed miserably again and again. The holy light suppressed the self-healing ability of their bodies. Roy knew that Burial and the others would not be able to help for the time being, so he spread his wings and rushed forward again to stall for time with Jubileus. Roy attacked from the front and continuously made moves against the Eyes of the World, attracting Jubileus's attention. On another side, Sparta poured magic power into his feet and swiftly climbed up along her braids. When the distance was right, he jumped back and forth between the braids and finally landed onto her shoulder. Holding the sword of Sparta, he slashed at her neck like a storm. Under Sparta's continuous attacks, a large gap was cut open on Jubileus's neck, revealing the golden holy light inside her body. But this gap quickly closed. Jubileus turned her head to look at Sparta by her neck, and two powerful golden rays shot out from her eyes. The golden rays were so fast that Sparta could not even dodge. One pierced through his wings, directly exploding off a wing in the middle, and the other pierced through his right abdomen. Sparta was blasted away by the violent explosion and spun while falling from the air. With a flash of light, Roy appeared below Sparta. He reached out to grab his leg and threw him to Rufaro, temporarily saving Sparta. Then he flew up again and circled behind Jubileus. Seeing that the distance was about right, Roy immediately bent his tail and pointed the tip at Jubileus. A purple transfiguration beam shot out and directly hit her. Turn into chocolate. With Roy's roar, Jubileus's enormous body suddenly turned black. It was the color of chocolate. However, after shooting out the transfiguration beam, Roy found that his magic power was almost drained in an instant. It could not be helped. Jubileus's strength far exceeded Roy's, and her body was so huge that the magic power consumed by the transfiguration beam increased exponentially, immediately causing his body to feel empty. Even so, Roy knew that it was not the time to stop. The transfiguration beam could only last for the minimum of 1 second. This attack opportunity was almost fleeting, so even though his body was empty, He gritted his teeth and squeezed out the last bit of magic power. The moment he finished transforming Jubileus, a bolt of lightning hit her. With a bang, the bolt of lightning directly shattered Jubileus, who had turned into chocolate. Her enormous body collapsed into countless charred black fragments that flew in all directions. But these flying chocolate pieces only lasted for a moment before immediately transforming back into countless fragments of Jubileus's body. These body pieces turned into golden light spots of varying sizes, making the sky of heaven look as though golden fireworks had exploded. Huff! Huff! Roy panted heavily as he looked at the flying body fragments. With the help of the transfiguration beam, he had defeated Jubileus's body for the first time. Seeing this scene, Sparta was very surprised about how Roy achieved the attack just now. It had to be known that this was the body of an archangel, so how could it be destroyed so easily? But Roy did it. Was that strange purple light just now his trump card? Sparta thought. It's indeed powerful. Shattered like this, even Jubileus will likely take some time to recover. Roy thought so too. Even if the body of an archangel was pure holy light and an immortal body, it should take a while to assemble back. Right? However, just as the two of them were thinking this, the entire space of heaven suddenly dimmed. A gigantic illusory clock of light suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. Accompanied by dim lights and shadows, time seemed to stop. It was not a real stop, but Roy's and Sparta's senses were affected. Under their gazes, they saw the needle in the gigantic clock move backward with a click. The illusory clock disappeared. But after it disappeared, the countless, scattered light spots that were Jubileus suddenly gathered back together. Under the intense light, her body appeared again. Perfect. Seeing this scene, Roy and Sparta were dumbfounded. Of course, they knew what had just happened, time had been reversed. Isn't this too against the rules? Sparta could not help shouting. Roy had a headache. Although he had long known that the power of gods was very formidable, being so powerful made him feel despair. With an inextinguishable, immortal elemental body and the ability to reverse time, how could they kill such an existence like her? Hey, Osiris! Sparta flew closer with difficulty. His broken wing had yet to recover, but he could still fly for a distance with the help of magic power. He shouted from afar, that ability to transform just now, after a few more times, I don't believe that we can't kill her. You stall for time while I quickly restore my magic power, Roy said without looking over. That attack just now consumed all my magic power. Okay. Sparta did not waste any time and rushed forward with the sword of Sparta. Not only him, but Burial, Madame Styx, and the others also heard their conversation, so they gritted their teeth, endured the pain from their injuries, and went up to entangle Jubileus in order to buy time for Roy to restore his magic power. Roy stayed in the air and began to restore his magic power with the help of the 10 times recovery speed of the cold winter armor. At the same time, he made the souls collected on the battlefield into magic power recovery potions and drank them bottle after bottle. Rufaro. While quickly restoring his magic power, he contacted Rufaro through telepathy. Later, I'll create a short opportunity to turn Jubileus into liquid. What you need to do is to open your mouth and drink this liquid. Why me? Rufaro was stunned. Because I can't drink too much in one gulp, Roy said. Only someone as large as you can drink the most in the shortest time. Can we eliminate her like this? Rufaro asked. Probably not. I'm not sure what kind of damage it can cause, but don't we have to try? Roy said. Okay, I'll try my best. Rufaro replied. After his magic power recovered, Roy said, Ready, I'm going. Understood. Rufaro replied and quickly twisted his body to approach Jubileus. Chapter 478, Calling Others to Beat Someone. During the time that Roy was recovering his magic power, Jubileus had brutally beaten Sparta, Burial, Madame Styx, and the other demon lords. Roy's transfiguration beam just now turned Jubileus into chocolate. Although the damage was not much, it was extremely insulting. Ever since she became an archangel, she had never been attacked in this way. After reversing time to restore her body, the first thing she wanted to do was to slap Roy to death. But unexpectedly, a group of demon lords pestered her, annoying her, so she vented her anger on these flies. Jubileus's punch blasted the largest Burial flying away. She directly grabbed the most agile Sparta with her time power, and golden holy light flames soared into the sky from under his feet, severely burning him. While Madame Styx was frantically dodging, Jubileus pinched her, causing her to vomit blood crazily in Jubileus's large hand. The remaining 2 demon lords wanted to rush forward to save Madame Styx, but two braids flying like giant snakes whipped them away. If a demon lord could casually defeat hundreds of high-ranked demons, then a demon king could also beat the same number of demon lords, and the same was true for archangels, which were at the same level as demon kings. This was domineering suppression in terms of realm and rank. During the battle with the demon lords, everyone could tell that Jubileus was not even using her full strength. The more they fought, the more desperate they became. Sparta and the others struggled to hold on. Fortunately, Roy recovered his magic power and rushed forward. Rufaro flew forward and used his long body to circle around Jubileus a few times before tightening and restraining her. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Roy pointed the tip of his tail at her and fired a transfiguration beam again. Turn into milk. Roy was very considerate. He was afraid that Rufaro would not be able to drink much due to his stomach swelling from too much gas if he turned her into cola, so he simply turned her into milk. Purple light enveloped her entire body, and with a splash, Jubileus turned into a large ball of white liquid floating in the air. Rufaro knew that Roy's move would not last long, so he did not dare to delay. He opened his mouth and sucked sharply, sucking in more than half of the white liquid into his stomach. He almost choked from swallowing too quickly. After the transformation time passed, the remaining liquid that was Jubileus immediately turned into golden light elements but was unable to maintain her angel form. "So, did you succeed?" Madama Styx hurriedly asked when she saw this. Roy did not answer but looked at Rufaro vigilantly. Rufaro was still in the air, his mouth shut tightly, looking very nervous. 1 second, 2 seconds, about 5 seconds later, Rufaro suddenly trembled all over. Before Roy could say anything, he saw countless beams of light suddenly shoot out from Rufaro's entire body, riddling his body full of holes from the inside out. His half-mechanical and half-biological body should not have felt any pain, but when these beams of light burst out from the inside, he screamed in pain uncontrollably. From his two dragon mouths, golden light spread out and soared into the sky. Seeing this, Roy immediately understood. Damn it! Roy slapped his thigh angrily. He couldn't digest her. This was a very helpless matter. After all, the time was too short. With the disparity in strength between Jubileus and Roy, the transfiguration beam could only turn her into milk for a second. In this 1 second, excluding the time Rufaro took to suck in, it was basically certain that she had already changed back after entering his stomach. The strong gastric acid in his stomach had no time to digest the milk. Since he could not digest the milk, he naturally could not destroy Jubileus's body. It was equivalent to him swallowing a ball of light elements. In fact, Roy had roughly guessed that this might be the case, but he still wanted to give it a try and had wished for the best. After the beams of light pierced through Rufaro's body, they gathered in the air. After fusing with the remaining half of the holy light, Jubileus returned. What a boring trick! Jubileus's voice echoed in heaven, full of intense anger. Not only was she turned into chocolate just now, but he used the same trick on her again? Thinking about how she was swallowed by a mere dragon just now, she became furious. It was still the same sentence. The damage was not much, but it was extremely insulting. Jubileus did not take these demon lords seriously at first, but these fellows actually overestimated themselves and provoked her time and time again. She was so angry that she had already forgotten about finding her soul fragment and planned to eliminate these flies first. In the golden holy light, Jubileus's body began to shrink bit by bit. Her body, which was originally around 7 stories tall, quickly became about the same size as Roy and the others. After her body shrank, it meant that her flexibility increased. At the same time, the holy light in her body became more condensed, and the pressure she exuded became stronger. After her body shrank, her light wings also shrank a bit. Moreover, from the initial pair of light wings, they became 6 wings. And compared to Seraphim, her 6 wings were shining brightly. Then she made her move. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, curled her legs, and then suddenly stretched them out. With this action, an invisible force spread out, instantly crossing a boundless distance and permeating most of heaven. Roy and the others could not see this invisible power, but they could roughly feel it because all of them felt that the surrounding space seemed to be different from before. Before everyone could react, they saw a piece of land suddenly appear in the sky where there was originally only a transparent path of holy light. This piece of land seemed to have appeared out of thin air, and after it appeared, it quickly spread in all directions. Then gullies appeared, mountains emerged, and the green plants on the ground rapidly sprouted, grew, and then blossomed. In the sky above the land, countless water vapors appeared out of thin air and quickly gathered to form clouds. These clouds were surging rapidly, and they were sometimes white and transparent, sometimes pitch black like ink. After a while, it began to rain and then soon began to snow. The feeling was as though a camera had recorded the changes of several days and then finished playing all of it in a few minutes. A small world that was completely different from heaven appeared just like that. Roy and the others did not know how large this world was or how wide it was. They only knew that it was boundless at a glance. Roy, Sparta, and the other demon lords all understood that this small world was created by Jubileus. No wonder those ancient angels had not followed Jubileus. They had long known her power and were afraid that she would affect them during the battle. If it was just creating a small world, it was not a big deal. But after the evolution of this small world was completed, a cruel place came. A layer of white frost suddenly covered the land, and the surrounding temperature instantly plummeted. The clouds in the sky became incomparably dark, and countless lightning shuttled through the clouds. Then the white frost on the ground flew up in reverse, and it actually began to snow from bottom to top. Meanwhile, the lightning in the clouds continuously bombarded the land from top to bottom. This strange meteorological phenomenon immediately enveloped Roy and the demon lords. Roy was fine. As a frost demon, he had an extremely high resistance to cold. But the flame demon Burial suffered. The ultra-low temperature suppressed the flames all over his body to the point of extinguishing, causing his entire body to start freezing. It was the same for the other demon lords. After a thick layer of ice covered them, their movements became sluggish. At the same time, enormous lightning bolts struck the demon lords who could not dodge in time one after another. They all screamed miserably. They moved their bodies strenuously, wanting to escape. But after flying down for some distance, they suddenly sprang upward, including Roy. After discovering this situation, Roy gasped. He realized that the gravity in this small world was in the opposite direction. Or rather, everything in this small world was under Jubileus's control. If she wanted gravity to go in the opposite direction, it would go in the opposite direction. She could even adjust gravity to become horizontal and diagonal. After the frost and lightning, it was a tsunami of the ground. The ground quickly rose up and became as tall as a small mountain. Tens of millions of tons of soil suddenly poured out of the ground like flowing water and slammed toward the people in the air, drowning Roy and the others. After the soil buried them, an incomparably powerful compression force came from all directions. It did not take long before the magic power shield raised by everyone collapsed. Under the pressure of the soil, Roy vomited blood. He desperately tried to use earth magic to control this soil, but he found that his magic power was like a stone sinking into the sea, and he could not control this soil at all. It was as though after Jubileus created this soil, she was the only one who could command it, and no one else could control it. In this situation, even Roy could not do anything about it. He could only use his physical strength to resist, but he was heavily injured in this twisting force. After some time, the darkness in front finally disappeared, and Roy, Sparta, and the others could see light again. Twisted earth pillars rose from the ground and firmly fixed them in place upright. At this moment, all Roy's bones were broken, let alone his wings. If not for the cold winter armor being so solid, his body might not even be human anymore. Under this circumstance, his body's self-healing ability was still working, repairing his body. But every time he repaired to a certain extent, the earth pillar would exert a twisting force again and severely re-injure him. This was punishment. These demon lords with immortal bodies would forever suffer pain. Jubileus was not far away from the earth pillars enveloping them and was looking at them coldly. At this moment, Roy finally understood why she had such a gaze. It was the gaze of a high and mighty god looking upon all living beings. Cough, cough. Roy coughed out large mouthfuls of purple blood. He turned to look at Sparta and the others and found that they were not much better. They were all dying in the earth pillars. Roy turned around and looked at Jubileus. I understand a little. This is the power of your authority, right? The power of creation. I see. The so-called authority is really a law. Jubileus looked at him and did not say anything. She merely raised her hand slightly and increased the force of the earth pillar twisting his body. Roy screamed, which seemed to please Jubileus, so she relaxed it a little and allowed him to catch his breath. But at this moment, Roy suddenly burst out laughing. Jubileus tilted her head slightly, seemingly wondering why he could still laugh in this situation. I admit that this power is absolutely the power of the gods. It's hard for me to move now. After laughing, Roy looked at Jubileus. But do you really think you won? With his words, 4 rhombus-shaped stone slabs suddenly appeared out of thin air and surrounded him. 4 similar but slightly different symbols were engraved on these 4 stone slabs. As soon as these 4 stone slabs with runes appeared, they attracted the attention of Jubileus, and even Sparta could not help but look over. "I once obtained a promise." Roy grinned sinisterly as he slowly said, 4 powerful existences promised me that they would help me kill an enemy once. But I've never had the chance to use this promise until now. This enemy worthy of them appearing is you, Jubileus." "That's right." Roy planned to call for help. As he spoke, his psychokinesis crushed the 4 stone slabs. "Descend into this world. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse." Chapter 479, Apocalypse's Arrival. As the stone slabs shattered, the 4 rays of light contained within them suddenly soared into the sky. The colors of these 4 rays were red, black, gray, and white. Not only did Sparta and Burial see it, but the ancient angels far away in Aesir city, as well as the detained Dante, Virgil, and Nero, saw these 4 rays as well. Under everyone's gazes, the 4 rays of different colors pierced through the small world created by Jubileus and flew straight into the sky of heaven. Then they drilled into 4 spatial vortexes and suddenly disappeared. After the light disappeared, the spatial vortexes in the sky slowly closed, and the sky of heaven returned to calm. Burial and the others looked at the sky in anticipation, hoping to see something. But 1 minute passed, 2 minutes passed, 5 minutes passed. And nothing happened. "Osiris, what's going on?" Most of Sparta's body was in an earth pillar, and he barely managed to turn his head to look at Roy speechlessly. Even Burial, Madame Styx, and the others were looking at Roy with grief on their faces, waiting eagerly for his explanation. But Roy himself was a little confused because he did not understand what was going on. Why did nothing happen after so long? Are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse not at home? Or is it because this world is too far away from the Darksider's world, and I can't send information out of the service area? Or have the stone slabs expired? Countless thoughts flashed through Roy's mind. He wanted to say something, but he did not know where to start. At this moment, Jubileus became impatient. She wanted to see what this demon lord wanted to do, but after waiting for a long time, nothing happened. This made her feel like she had been fooled by him, so she clenched her hand and prepared to use her power to strangle all the demons. However, before she began, a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared in the sky. Through the shattered sky of the small world, everyone could see that the sky of heaven was trembling. Yes, trembling. The atmosphere was shaking, and light was distorting, giving people the feeling that the sky was trembling. The next second, a massive pitch-black spatial vortex suddenly appeared in the sky of heaven. It was as though a rift had been violently torn open in the space there. In the vortex was endless deep darkness, as though there was a gigantic eye looking down from the sky. Roy immediately understood when he saw this phenomenon. The damn message was finally sent to the station. The network delay had been killing him. Just now, he almost wanted to find a hole in the ground to hide in. This spatial vortex was so immense that it shocked the ancient angels in Aesir city. They wanted to fly up to check the situation, and Jubileus was also looking up at the deep darkness, so she did not stop the angels. Thus, just as a group of angels flew to the bottom of the vortex, a light suddenly flashed in the deep darkness, and a huge flame suddenly burst out. Accompanied by the flame was loud rumbling. This flame was like a meteorite as it flew down with billowing smoke. Caught off guard, many of the ancient angels immediately turned into ashes without even making a sound. But this was not the end. Flashes of light erupted in the darkness one after another. 3 more balls of flames rushed out of the void and fell like meteors with thick, billowing smoke. The 4 consecutive meteors directly broke through the angels' formation, and angel feathers were falling everywhere in the sky. After passing through the sky of heaven, these 4 meteors seemed to spot their target and headed straight for Roy. Then they broke through the sky of the small world created by Jubileus. Boom! 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 4 deafening impacts followed. In the small world, the land seemed to be bombed by cruise missiles. Every meteor that crashed on the ground broke the ground inch by inch, and the spreading dust formed slowly rising mushroom clouds. After the smoke and dust dissipated, everyone saw 4 enormous craters in the ground. At the bottom of the craters, 4 tall figures slowly stood up. The first figure was a man in heavy black armor. The knees and gloves of the heavy armor had ferocious skull patterns, and behind him was a large golden sword that looked extremely heavy. Sparta and the others tried hard to see the man's face, but the red hood on his head covered it. The second figure was a bare-chested man wearing a skull mask. He had disheveled hair, grayish-white skin, and a large scar on his chest. There were 2 strange short scythes at his lower back. The third figure was a woman. She had a fiery body, and her long red hair was fluttering like flames. The weapon in her hand was a long whip. As for the last figure, he was also wearing a mask. But his mask only covered the top of his head but revealed his mouth. He was completely different from the second masked man. This man was wearing light armor and had a purple cloak wrapped around his neck. The cloak was fluttering high behind him, but it looked tattered. As for his weapons, they were two large pistols with a rough style. Sparta and the others did not know the origins of these four people, but Roy knew that these four figures were war, death, fury, and strife respectively. When he saw the four appear, he could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Being late was better than never. Among the four horsemen of the apocalypse, Roy had only seen two of them, war and fury. As for death and strife, Roy had not seen them during his stay in the Darksider's world. Under the gazes of everyone, the four horsemen walked out of the craters they had smashed when they fell. War turned his head and looked around. Where is this? Why were we summoned together? Death and strife were also observing their surroundings. They were unable to answer War. Only Fury looked up and saw Roy sealed in an earth pillar. Seeing him, she was stunned. It could not be helped. Roy's current appearance was a little different from when he was in the Darksider's world. Moreover, when he saw Fury, he was only a high-ranked demon, and now he had become a demon lord. This leap in strength was so fast that it surprised her. Although she was surprised, she naturally recognized Roy as the summoner. After all, she was the one who had given him the rune slabs to summon the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and she was the one who had made the agreement with him. "Oh, Osiris, you don't look so good," Fury teased Roy. Taking advantage of the appearance of the four horsemen attracting Jubileus's attention, Roy suddenly exerted all his strength and finally broke free from the restraint of the earth pillar. He floated in the air and stretched his body while responding to Fury. "Nonsense. If I were in good condition, would I have called you over? What's going on? Fury, do you know this demon?" Strife walked forward, crossed his arms, and looked up at Roy in the sky. War answered, "This demon is named Osiris. I've seen him once before, but I didn't expect Fury to give him the summoning runes." "And she didn't mention it to us," Death said coldly. "Hey, don't worry too much about it. I just forgot." Fury shrugged and spread her hands. "In fact, I didn't expect this demon to still be alive, so I didn't mention the summoning runes." Roy slowly landed and came in front of the four horsemen. He looked at the two horsemen he had never seen before, Death and Strife, and then turned to Fury. "Unfortunately, I won't die for the time being." Fury waved her hand. "Of course I know. But where is this? Is it the world of Azeroth, Warcraft world, you mentioned last time?" "No." Roy shook his head. "This isn't Azeroth, but another world. I summoned you here because I want you, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, to fulfill that promise and help me eliminate my enemy." "Enemy?" Fury turned around and looked at Jubileus floating in the sky. She said in astonishment, "The enemy you're talking about isn't her, right?" "Yes, is there a problem?" Roy sneered. Fury slapped her forehead and said in annoyance, "Damn it. I shouldn't have given you that promise back then. You actually want us to help you deal with an archangel?" "What? You can't deal with her?" Roy asked jokingly. Fury did not say anything and turned to look at her three brothers. War looked cold and stayed silent. Death wore a mask, and his expression could not be seen. Strife whistled and looked at the surrounding scenery, looking as though it had nothing to do with him. Hey! Don't be like this." Fury waved the whip in her hand angrily. "I made a promise on behalf of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. This isn't my problem alone." At this moment, Death finally asked in a cold tone, "What's going on? Why did you make a promise on our behalf?" So Fury told him what had happened. "Corruption?" Death looked at Roy in surprise. "Is what you said true? Has the corruption power of Azeroth really reached this degree?" "It might be worse." Roy nodded. "In fact, when I just became a demon lord, I found traces of the Burning Legion in the Abyss. They captured frost demons like me everywhere in the Abyss. Although I'm not sure how powerful the Burning Legion has become, it is definitely very troublesome." Death looked at Roy for a while before saying, "Okay, Fury's promise to you is effective. We'll deal with your enemy. But correspondingly, the next time we meet, you have to be in Azeroth. And we won't help you anymore." "Got it." Roy nodded. "If I summon you in Azeroth, I'll help you stay in that world for at least a month. This is the promise of the agreement." Death nodded and turned to face Jubileus. The other three horsemen also turned to face her. They drew their weapons and held them in their hands. Chapter 480, Combination Technique of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Who are you? Jubileus spread her hands on both sides of her body, and her pair of golden eyes under the ball mask stared at the four horsemen of the apocalypse and sized them up. She could feel the powerful strength of the four people who suddenly appeared. But what made her most curious was that she sensed the interweaved aura of angels and demons from the four. As an ancient angel and having been asleep for so long, she seemed to have never seen a Nephilim, so she was very surprised that the four of them had the bloodlines of angels and demons at the same time. However, the four horsemen were not good at communicating, and they had no interest in answering her question. But looking at the enormous wings of light behind Jubileus and the small world she created around her, Strife complained to Fury, "Seriously, Fury, you've found us a rather troublesome job this time." "Shut up," Fury yelled at him and swung the whip in her hand. "Do you think I'm willing to fight an archangel?" Although they said this, neither Fury nor the other three horsemen had any fear. Their words were full of confidence, showing that they did not think that they were incapable of confronting an archangel. Jubileus in front of them was merely trouble for the four horsemen. Of course, Sparta and the others heard the conversation between the four horsemen and found it unbelievable. They did not know the identity of the four horsemen, so they did not know where the confidence came from. After all, the four horsemen were mainly active in the Darksiders world. Only those who had been to that high-end world would know of their existence. Only Roy, and Julia, knew about the strength of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Samael had once said that he did not care much about a single horseman. But if the four horsemen came together, even he had to be careful. It was evident that the strength of the four horsemen could match that of a demon king. "Let's get to work. The sooner we finish, the sooner we can go back. Without us, Samael and Lilith will probably become restless again," War said in his deep voice. The giant sword in his hand was not the Chaos Eater that Roy had seen before but a golden sword with solemn patterns. This golden sword was a divine artifact of the Darksiders world, the Armageddon blade. War had used it to kill the Destroyer, who had transformed into a massive black dragon. Of course, this was what happened after Roy left the Darksiders world. After all, it had been a long time, and Roy did not know much about the current situation of that world. But there was no doubt that the four horsemen had already left the control of the Charred Council and regained all their powers. Moreover, because their Nephilim bloodline was the same as half-demon bloodlines, despite possessing the bloodlines of angels and demons, their essence was still human. Thus, when they traveled through the infinite worlds, they were just like half-demons and were unaffected by the world repulsive effect. So they were now the peak version of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. As his voice fell, War had already taken the lead and rushed out. As he charged forward, a huge, vigorous red horse quickly emerged from the ground, allowing War to ride on its back easily. This horse dashed forward on its four hooves, leaving a long trail of red flames on the ground. Not only him, but the other three horsemen were also riding their respective warhorses while charging. Death's warhorse was a skeletal warhorse full of nether flames, and Fury's warhorse was one with a long white mane. As for Strife, he was riding a black warhorse full of dark aura. The color of these four warhorses also corresponded to the color of the four rays of light when the four horsemen of the apocalypse had descended. The four huge warhorses charged together and actually created formidable pressure like a mighty army pressing forward. The ground was rumbling and shaking, as though thousands of war drums were beating. In the air, a mocking smile appeared on the corner of Jubileus's mouth as she looked at the four rushing on the ground. She felt that these four were crazy. They actually wanted to attack her from the ground? Could they reach her? However, before the mocking smile on her face disappeared, she suddenly froze because after charging some distance, the war horses actually rose into the air and carried the four horsemen as though they were on flat ground. There was clearly no path of holy light, but these four war horses were soaring into the air. Moreover, they left four series of various elemental hoofprints in the sky. Seeing the four knights charging at her, Jubileus was shocked and quickly defended. A golden holy light shield enveloped her entire body. The moment her shield appeared, the four horsemen also attacked. The first to attack was not War at the front but Strife at the back. Riding on the back of his black warhorse, he held his two large pistols in his hands and fired at Jubileus. In just an instant, the firearms in Strife's hand poured out incomparably powerful firepower. The dense rain of bullets tore through the air and formed a trajectory that looked like a dazzling beam of light. When the bullets landed on Jubileus's shield, the concentrated magic power in the bullets erupted with a bang, exploding into black flames on her shield. While charging, Strife kept firing at Jubileus. The successive explosions of black flames bombarded her shield, causing continuous ripples. However, the one who finally broke through Jubileus's shield was War, who slashed fiercely with the Armageddon blade. When he rushed to her side, War held his sword with one hand and struck mightily against her shield. His sword was so fast that even the movement of his arm could not be seen clearly, and only an intense golden light flashed in the sky. With a loud clang, the heavy Armageddon blade crushed Jubileus's shield with unparalleled power and then slashed at her head without slowing down. Jubileus raised her right hand and used her wrist to block the remaining force of the slash. But the powerful force of the sword still pressed down on her body, causing her to tremble. Before she could retract her arm, the huge warhorse under War suddenly raised its two front legs and kicked ferociously. The two large hooves directly hit her abdomen, causing her to shrink back. "I was actually kicked by a horse?" Jubileus roared in anger. One of her braids flew over and violently hit War and his warhorse. This powerful attack immediately sent War and his warhorse flying. But before she could retract her braid, Death, riding on his skeletal warhorse, rushed past her and slashed at her braid with his two scythes. With the force of the warhorse's charge, Death's two scythes created numerous sparks on her braid. Finally, with tremendous force, he cut off her braid. With the braid cut off, one side of Jubileus's face was immediately exposed. Fury raised the whip full of powerful lightning power in her hand high. Pa! She whipped her face hard. As expected, women were the most ruthless to women. It was fine if Fury did not attack, but once she did, she slapped Jubileus's face. Jubileus screamed and reached out to grab Fury's whip. She swung her hand and sent Fury flying along with her horse. But because her movement was too big, she inevitably exposed an opening, and a figure immediately flashed in front of her. It was Strife. He had gotten off his warhorse and appeared in front of Jubileus in a ghost-like manner. He pressed the muzzles of his two guns on her chest. How fierce, chest! With Strife's whistle, his two guns suddenly burst out. An intense flash of light suddenly appeared in the sky. The two guns in Strife's hands were clearly only pistols, but at this moment, they erupted with a powerful force similar to that of the firing of a battleship's cannon. Under the highly concentrated magic power, the flames erupting from the muzzles were tens of meters long. Under this close-range attack, Jubileus did not even make a sound before she was blown away in an instant. Chapter 481, Power of Judgment. From luring the enemy, breaking the shield, creating flaws, and then the final explosive attack, the four horsemen of the apocalypse could be said to have done it smoothly in one go. After shooting down Jubileus from the sky, a pair of enormous black fallen angel wings suddenly appeared behind Strife. These fallen angel wings had 3 pairs of split wings on them, making them look like 6 wings. After spreading his wings, Strife slowly descended, and his black warhorse returned from its hiding place and supported him again. 4 people, 4 horses, stood in the air and looked down at Jubileus, who was falling to the ground like a meteor. To be honest, after seeing this scene, Burial, Madame Styx, and the others were extremely surprised. They had fought against Jubileus earlier, but their attacks could not even break through her defense. On the other hand, the 4 people summoned by Osiris not only had exquisite cooperation in their attacks, but they were also exceptionally powerful. This was the first time that they had seen Jubileus beaten to such a sorry state. When Jubileus was still a little distance from the ground, she finally stopped her body from falling and turned around to float again. But her expression, which had always been expressionless, now looked unexpectedly ferocious. The reason was the long whip mark on her face, the kick marks on her abdomen, and the scorch marks on her chest. These wounds were so obvious that even Roy and the others could see them from afar. Moreover, they also noticed that these wounds on Jubileus did not recover under her holy light power but remained. After discovering this, Roy was a little surprised. He realized that the attacks of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse seemed to contain some special power, and it was this power that was suppressing the recovery of Jubileus's injuries. Even the people watching the battle noticed it, let alone Jubileus. Her palm was full of strong golden holy light as she tried to smooth the whip mark on her face, but she could not get rid of it no matter what. She was furious as she said hatefully, "Damn it! What is this? Why can't I get rid of it? Don't waste your efforts." Strife spun the 2 guns in his hands and said teasingly, "Since we dared to fight against an archangel like you, don't tell me you really think that we wouldn't have any preparations? The 4 of us have the power of judgment. With this power of judgment, we 4 siblings have killed angels and demons. Together, we can finish off your heaven." The power of judgment? Hearing this term, Not only was Jubileus stunned, but Roy and Sparta were stunned as well. They looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. If Roy's guess was right, this so-called power of judgment was probably the same as the authority of the Demon King and Archangel level. However, the strange thing was that Roy could feel that any one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse was much stronger than demon lords like him and Sparta, but they were not at the Demon King level. How could they obtain the power of authority while being at the level higher than Demon Lord but lower than Demon King? Roy's eyes flickered as he thought of what Samael had said. He suspected that this power of judgment could only be used when the four horsemen gathered together. Regarding Jubileus's authority of creation and the four horsemen's authority of judgment, Roy could not imagine what kind of power it was. Perhaps he could only experience it after he reached that level and grasped his own authority. But this did not prevent him from seeing that the power of judgment of the four horsemen had a powerful suppression effect on Jubileus's immortal body. When an immortal body was no longer immortal, it meant that even an archangel like Jubileus could be destroyed and killed. The body had to be driven by the soul, and the soul had to be attached to the body for protection. Any problem with the body and soul would turn into a disaster. Even powerful gods could not violate this principle because gods could also die. After realizing that these four horsemen could actually use the power of authority, Jubileus finally let go of her indifference and became serious. An illusory giant clock appeared in the world again. With the reversal of the clock needle, all the wounds on Jubileus's body disappeared in the next second. Since her body's recovery power could not heal these wounds, she would reverse time again. This scene not only caused Roy's and the others' hearts to sink, but it also made the four horsemen look solemn. Only now did they discover that this archangel in front of them still had the power of time. This trouble was much greater than previously imagined. Any existence that controlled the power of time was a bug-level existence. Lilith alone in the Darksider's world was enough to give the four horsemen a headache. Unexpectedly, they encountered another one after coming to this world. But at this moment, Roy's voice came in the ears of the four horsemen, using magic to transmit his voice to them. Don't worry. This ability to turn back time doesn't originate from her but from the power of a divine artifact, the eyes of the world. Now, the eyes of the world is on her forehead. It's the glowing third eye. If you can find a way to take away the eyes of the world, her ability to turn back time will no longer be usable. After hearing what Royce said, the four horsemen of the apocalypse could not help but heave a sigh of relief. So that's how it is. There's still a way to deal with it. After Jubileus recovered from her injuries, her power began to spread domineeringly again. The small world she created once again underwent immense changes. Not only did the direction of gravity become chaotic again, but gravity also increased by nearly 100 times. Everyone on the small world suddenly sank, and they felt as though their bodies were being violently torn in all directions. This powerful chaotic gravity made the four horsemen roar in pain. The war horses under them could not withstand this damage, so the four horsemen put away their war horses. They used the power of judgment to minimize the impact of Jubileus's power on them. Then they spread their fallen angel wings and charged at her again. With a raise of her hand, numerous rocks, which had become incomparably dense due to being compressed by the high gravity, floated up from the ground. They turned into meteors and flew toward the four horsemen. Powerful flames appeared around the four horsemen, and just like four enormous fireballs, they smashed these rocks as they charged forward. When the four of them rushed to the front of her, what greeted them was a golden holy sword condensed from powerful holy light suddenly appearing in her hand. Clang! With a deafening bang, War's Armageddon blade slashed at Jubileus's holy sword. The collision of the two powerful swords caused a shock wave like a nuclear explosion occurred. In this shock wave, the unaffected Jubileus swept away War, and all her braids moved together to block the attacks of the other three horsemen. The four horsemen and Jubileus engaged in close combat. The powerful force that constantly erupted made the entire small world seem as though it had entered a cataclysm. The devastating power and impacts blasted this small world until it was on the verge of collapse. "We have to go out. We can't intervene in this battle," Sparta shouted at Roy. "If we don't go out, we might be buried." Roy nodded and did not waste any time. He endured the pain of his body being torn by the chaotic supergravity, spread his wings, and flew toward the outside of the small world. Behind him, Sparta, Burial, and the others quickly followed. The place they chose to rush out was naturally where the four horsemen had smashed through the small world when they descended. The demon lords used all their strength and tried their best to maintain high-speed flight. In the end, after some time, they finally left the small world. After rushing out, Roy found that the small world Jubileus created had an astonishing area of at least 20,000 square kilometers. Since this small world was still in heaven, looking down from above, he could see a transparent membrane of light wrapped around it. At the periphery of the small world was heaven's Aesir city. When Roy and the others rushed out, they found that the ancient angels in the distant Aesir city were in chaos. "Oh no! Dante and the others." Sparta immediately reacted and hurriedly spread his wings to fly toward Aesir city because he found that the chaos in Aesir city was due to the ancient angels surrounding Dante and the others. After Jubileus revived and broke the barrier of Aesir city from the inside, everyone could finally enter and exit Aesir city. Of course, the detained Dante, Virgil, and Nero were unwilling to wait for the battle to end, so they found an opportunity to break free from the angels' control and wanted to escape to meet up with Roy in Sparta. The battle between Jubileus and the four horsemen of the apocalypse attracted the attention of the angels, and they were caught off guard, allowing Dante and the others to succeed. But after reacting, the angels immediately began to hunt down the three of them, thus causing the chaos in Aesir city. Roy led Burial and the others and rushed over with Sparta. Soon, they saw Dante and the others fighting the angels while retreating toward them. They could not intervene in the battle between the four horsemen and Jubileus, but they could still beat these ancient angels, so they immediately rushed forward with sinister grins and began to rescue Dante and the other two. All of heaven was in chaos at this moment. Chapter 482, Atavism. Roy, Sparta, and the others originally planned to support Dante, Nero, and Virgil's retreat, but the angel army in Aesir city noticed their intentions, so they sent several troops to stop them. 4 six-winged ancient seraphim led troops to intercept Roy and the others and kept entangling them. Sparta was eager to save his son and kept charging forward, so the resistance he faced was naturally the greatest. Under the siege of the 4 seraphim, he was in a dangerous situation, and a holy light spear almost stabbed through his back. If not for Roy and Burial promptly rushing over, he would have been heavily injured. Burial and Sparta charged in front, Roy rode on Rafaro, and behind them, Madama sticks bombarded the angel army. However, the angels seemed determined to prevent the two sides from converging. Even when the front line was broken, they would immediately send troops to fill the gap. For a while, the two sides were in a deadlock. Dante, Virgil, and Nero were in a bad situation. Dante and Virgil were both in Sin Devil form, and it was more than enough for them to protect themselves under the siege of the angels. But the problem was Nero. He still could not enter Sin Devil form and could not transform into a demon, so he naturally could not fly. He could only rely on his magic power to continuously double jump, and from time to time, he would shoot out the cable in his cybernetic arm and grab some angels in the air to borrow their strength. He knew that the current terrain was not suitable for him to fight in, so he avoided fighting and kept moving toward Roy and the others while Dante and Virgil fought and covered his retreat. But this situation definitely could not last long. After the angels figured out Nero's movement pattern, they immediately seized the opportunity to stop him. When an ancient angel was grabbed by Nero, he immediately detonated a holy light bomb in front of him. Nero was caught off guard, and as soon as he flew in front of the angel, the blast sent him flying. There was no longer any path of holy light near Aesir city. Once he fell, it was equivalent to falling from a height of nearly 10,000 meters. No. Nero. While fighting the angels, Dante was also paying attention to Nero's situation. When he saw that an accident had happened to Nero, he immediately pushed back his opponent and wanted to rush over to save him. However, there was a shadow faster than Dante. Virgil passed Dante without a word, stretched his wings, and rushed toward Nero as fast as he could. Although Virgil was cold as ever, Nero had a different meaning to him. He already owed his son too much, so it was absolutely impossible for him to watch Nero die like this. In his Sin Devil form, Virgil turned into a meteor, charged straight toward Nero, and extended his hand toward him from afar. Nero did not give up either and was also trying to save himself. When he saw Virgil rushing over, he immediately became energetic. But when he saw the situation behind Virgil, his expression immediately changed. Following behind Virgil were 3 similar meteors. They were 3 six-winged seraphim holding enormous holy swords, and their target was none other than Virgil. "Virgil! Behind you! Be careful," Nero shouted. "Ignore me. Deal with the enemies first." However, Virgil turned a deaf ear. He knew very well that he should first deal with the enemies behind him, but after the delay, he might not be able to save Nero. Thus, he continued heading toward Nero without a care, as though he did not hear Nero's shout. Dante was also rushing over desperately. He flew over and stopped one of the seraphim, but he was helpless regarding the other two. In the air, Virgil finally caught up to Nero. He stretched out his demon claws to grab Nero's arm and then suddenly threw him up. Dante. Thrown upward, Nero flew involuntarily toward Dante. Then he turned around and saw a scene that made his eyes turn red. The two seraphim following closely behind stabbed their holy swords into Virgil's chest the moment he flung Nero away. Purple demon blood shot out as the sharp blades pierced into his chest. Dazzling light shone in the sky, and then the intense holy light on the holy swords burned the blood, turning it into choking smoke. The premonition of death came. But under the intense pain, Virgil smiled toward Nero. "Live on, Nero." Nero, whom Dante had just caught, was stunned when he saw Virgil's smile. His hand was still absent-mindedly reaching out to Virgil, but he could not grab anything. He could only watch as Virgil's body burned with golden holy flames and fell from the air. No. The reason in Nero's mind utterly broke at this moment. As he roared and screamed in sorrow, his right cybernetic arm turned into countless dust, and a new arm quickly grew out. At the same time, a layer of pitch-black cuticle began to spread from his arm and rapidly spread over his entire body. Dante noticed Nero's changes and looked at him in surprise. He saw his nails become sharp, feather-shaped demon horns appear on his forehead, and a pair of blue demon wings appear on his back. This kid, Dante gasped. Of course, he knew that Nero had entered Sin Devil form and completed his demonization under his agitation. But he did not expect Nero's Sin Devil form to possess such formidable magic power. While holding him, Dante felt his entire body was burning hot, and the flames of magic power had already enveloped Nero's entire body. Subconsciously, Dante let go of Nero. After being released, Nero disappeared with a bang. Nero instantly broke through the sound barrier and chased after the falling Virgil. The two seraphim who killed Virgil raised their swords to intercept him, but the magic power shock wave brought by Nero directly knocked them flying away. In the distance, even Roy and Sparta saw the meteor that was Nero swoop down. The unrestrained and unscrupulous display of magic power made Nero's presence explode. Nero? Sparta was panting after killing a high-level angel and stared at the meteor in disbelief. Roy was also quite surprised. To be honest, he thought that because of his appearance, Nero would not be able to enter Sin Devil form so easily in a short time. He did not expect that due to Virgil's accident, Nero would complete this leap in his agitation. As a descendant of Sparta, Nero also had Sparta's demon lord bloodline in his body. He was the child of Virgil and a human woman. Dante and Virgil had half of the demon bloodline in their bodies, while Nero only had 1/4. Nero's demon bloodline was thinner than Dante's and Virgil's, meaning that it was more difficult for him to complete the full demonization than them. However, it was worth noting that once Nero completed his demonization, the strength he displayed would be even greater. His demon form actually had faint atavism. The moth-like feather-shaped demon horns and the light wings that were very different from that of other demons both showed the characteristics of insect-type demons. Even for Dante and Virgil, their demon forms only had some characteristics of insect-type demons and were incomparable to Nero's demon form. What's going on? Could it be that after the demon bloodline became thinner, it instead caused the bloodline to become purer? Roy could not come to any conclusion for the moment, but he was really envious of Sparta. His family of 4 had all become demon lords, and they were all powerful. What's with Sparta's insect-type demon bloodline? Is it possible that their family are all descendants of demon king Beelzebub? Nero was so fast that he crossed the distance of 3 kilometers in merely a few seconds and caught Virgil before he fell. Virgil could no longer maintain his demon form at this time, and the holy flames on his body were still burning. After catching him, Nero immediately injected a large amount of magic power into Virgil to help him extinguish the holy flames. Under the stimulation of the magic power, Virgil woke up. After opening his eyes, he looked at the unfamiliar demon in front of him in disbelief. After a long time, he said with difficulty, "You're Nero." Virgil. Nero's strange demon eyes looked at Virgil with a complicated expression. "Why did you?" Before Nero finished speaking, Virgil understood and smiled slightly. "Thank you, Nero." "Never mind," Nero replied. He spread his light wings and flew higher up again. After arriving on the battlefield, he used his extreme speed to pull Dante out of the siege. Then the 3 of them turned into a stream of light and broke through the angel army's defense line to arrive beside Sparta. Virgil. In the sky, Roy did not say anything when he saw this. He only shouted at Virgil and threw a potion bottle at him. Virgil grabbed it and looked at it in puzzlement. But he soon realized that it was for him to treat his injuries, so he raised his head and downed it. Under the effect of this potion refined from souls, Smoke quickly emerged from the two terrifying wounds on Virgil's chest. After the residual holy light power was completely expelled, his self-healing ability began to work again. After recovering, Virgil transformed into his demon form once more and floated in the air. The Sparta family of 4, together with Roy, Burial, and Madama Styx, a total of 7 demon lords stood opposite the angel army. The powerful magic power emitted by the 7 demon lords combined together and caused the angel army of tens of thousands opposite them to be stunned. However, the angels naturally would not give up because of the strength of the enemy. They quickly regrouped and prepared to fight. Just as both sides were prepared to go all out, the world suddenly changed. The sky of heaven, which was full of holy light, suddenly dimmed and turned into a dark starry sky. The shining stars hung in the dark night like gems. Have we entered Jubileus's small world again? Madama Styx looked around in surprise and doubt. But she found that the starry sky was endless and immediately realized that her guess was wrong. Chapter 483, The Trumpet of World Purification. It was not a small world, but the entire purgatory space where heaven was changed at this moment. The eternally bright sky turned into a night sky with shining stars. Astonished, Roy and the others turned their heads to look at Jubileus. They knew that apart from this goddess with the power of creation, there was no one else who could do this. When the sky darkened, all the angels in Aesir City looked alarmed. They had been in this heaven for thousands of years and had never seen a moment of darkness descending. This phenomenon that affected all of heaven suddenly gave the angels a bad premonition. At this moment, the goddess of light Jubileus was standing in the sky, looking a little disheveled. There was a gorgeous golden cross scepter in her hand, which was her exclusive weapon. With it, she could barely block the attacks of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Clearly, the combat style of the 4 horsemen made Jubileus very uncomfortable. Their 4 different weapons besieged her in close combat, and she could not effectively resist these weapons with her bare hands, forcing her to use her weapon that she had not used for a long time to fight them. The powerful power of judgment on the weapons of the 4 horsemen severely interfered with Jubileus's power. Jubileus's power of creation, to put it simply, was the power to change the state of reality. She could realize and control any rule and state that she wanted, but the power of judgment of the 4 horsemen could overrule her changed state of reality. They overruled the strange gravity created by Jubileus, overruled the damage caused by her attacks, and even overruled the phenomenon of her using the eyes of the world to reverse time. During the battle, they cut off her long braids, destroyed her armor, and left numerous unhealable wounds on her body. Of course, it had not been easy for the 4 horsemen to do this, and the 4 of them also suffered heavy injuries. It was indeed very troublesome to deal with an archangel. In order to fulfill the agreement with Roy, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse were going all out. Not long after waking up, Jubileus encountered such difficult enemies, making her realize that if she did not deal with the 4 horsemen as soon as possible, she might suffer severe injuries and fall into a deep sleep again. So after she forced back the 4 horsemen, her scepter burst out with dazzling light. In this light, the small world she created quietly collapsed, but it did not disappear. Instead, it continued to expand and eventually enveloped all of heaven and the entire purgatory space. She turned the entire purgatory space where heaven was into her domain. The stars in the dark night sky were continuously shining, becoming faster and faster, brighter and brighter. It felt as though countless stars were rushing over from the distant universe, eventually turning into giant dazzling light spots in the night sky. When Jubileus began to wave the cross scepter in her hand, these giant dazzling light spots immediately began to distort, and strange faces appeared on the surface of the shining stars. The expressions of these faces were either sad, happy, or crying. But in the end, they all turned into angry expressions. They twisted and roared as they dragged long tails in the sky while howling toward the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This scene might have been difficult to describe, but this scene of the stars rioting caused Roy and the others to be dumbfounded. The angry faces roaring out seemed to have come alive. When they appeared in the sky of heaven, everyone saw countless large and small meteors. The large meteors could reach a diameter of thousands of meters, while the small ones were only a few hundred meters. With so many meteors dragging tails of flames and roaring, it felt as if the sky was collapsing like an avalanche. The formidable pressure was suffocating. Thousands of angry meteors smashed down toward the 4 horsemen one after another. Although Jubileus was aiming at the 4 horsemen, in fact, even Aesir City, dozens of kilometers away, was not spared. The meteor shower that covered the entire sky of heaven not only destroyed the city wall of Aesir City and the buildings in it, but even the Kabbalah, which covered the sky and sun, was not spared. After an enormous meteor brushed past it, the upper part of this gigantic tree broke in two with a crack and fell with the collapse of Aesir city. All the floating islands in heaven were blown up by the meteorites in this storm of impacts. Without the support of magic power, tens of millions of cubic meters of soil and rubble began to pour down. Before harming others, the harm came to them first. The angel's bad premonition finally came true. Under Jubileus's power, the doomsday catastrophe of heaven arrived first. In the air, Roy, Sparta, Dante, Virgil, and the others were all desperately dodging these meteors hurtling down from the sky. Looking at the huge meteors burning with flames brushing past them and smashing into the ground, erupting into tremendous explosions, Burial roared in exasperation, "Damn it! Is Jubileus crazy? If this continues, this purgatory space." Roy was also suspecting that there was something wrong with Jubileus's brain. In order to kill the four horsemen, she did not hesitate to destroy heaven. But Sparta calmly replied, "It's not strange. What do you think archangels are? They are existences with the power to destroy worlds." "But she's an angel," Madama Styx yelled breathlessly. "Isn't destroying worlds something that only we demons like to do?" Sparta snorted coldly. "Who said that? Don't you know that in the doctrines created by angels, the trumpets of the archangels were once mentioned? When the first angel sounded his trumpet, hail and fire mingled with blood is hurled to earth, burning up a third of the trees on the planet and all the green grass. When the second angel sounded his trumpet, a great mountain ablaze with fire plunges into the ocean. A third of the ocean turns to blood, a third of the living creatures in the ocean die, and a third of the ships are destroyed. When the third angel sounded his trumpet, a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. When the fourth angel sounded his trumpet, a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. The angels who blew their trumpets mentioned in these descriptions referred to the seven archangels. The scene described also referred to their terrifying power that was enough to destroy and purify the world. Although Jubileus was not one of the seven archangels and did not have a trumpet, she also had this world-destroying power. If you really thought that since she was an angel, she was kind and amiable, then you would be gravely mistaken. It was not only demons who could destroy worlds, but angels as well. What does she want to do? Dante naturally understood what Sparta meant and asked loudly as he moved through the gaps of the meteor shower. "Trinity," Roy sighed and pointed at the distant horizon. "Look over there, and you'll understand." Everyone looked in the direction Roy was pointing. When they saw the sight in the sky, they were first stunned and then gasped. Jubileus's power was not only affecting the purgatory space where heaven realm was but also the human world. Under the distant horizon, everyone saw vague scenes of the human world. The dark night sky of heaven was gradually merging with the towering buildings of the human world that began to appear faintly, making these scenes gradually become clearer. Recalling what Roy said just now, the word Trinity, everyone immediately realized that Jubileus was using her power to transform the purgatory space of heaven, making it begin to merge with the space where the human world was. In other words, not only the human world, but the purgatory space where the demon world was also beginning to merge. What Jubileus really wanted to fuse was all the spaces of the twin worlds. Once the fusion was complete, not only would all of heaven be destroyed, but under the bombardment of the stars, the demon world and the human world would not be spared either. She wanted to eliminate all the demons and humans of the twin worlds, make these two worlds become one, and rebuild the kingdom of the gods above the ruins. Yes, there was no need to sound any trumpet nor to fight. Jubileus was fulfilling her duty as an archangel to purify the entire world. As the fusion progressed, the humans of the Bayonetta world and the Devil May Cry world discovered the phenomenon in the sky. It was clearly daytime, but a dark night sky appeared in half of the sky. The shining stars turned into angry faces and fell from the sky. The phantoms of angels appeared in the sky, and the phantoms of demons appeared on the ground. All kinds of strange and bizarre scenes came one after another. The weak humans did not know what was going on, so they either shouted and fled in fear or knelt on the ground and prayed desperately. The demons who had already retreated to the demon world looked at the meteors that suddenly appeared in the sky with dumbfounded expressions. They watched as they turned from illusory to real and gradually became a true meteor shower. They watched as they howled and smashed into the vast surface of the demon world, causing massive earthquakes and mushroom clouds. As the demons scattered in fright, They found that there were human phantoms also fleeing in all directions, and these phantoms were also repeating the process of turning from illusory to real. If someone could see this scene from the universe at this moment, they would discover that two planets that existed independently in the void were beginning to overlap in spatial coordinates. The scene of another planet appeared on one planet, just like a double-yolked egg wrapped in the same eggshell, and the two yolks were still moving closer together. And the purgatory space where heaven and the demon world were was the egg white in this eggshell. Now, they had thoroughly mixed together. It was as though the world had turned upside down. Chapter 484, Rodin, Jean. Under the dark night sky, Jubileus's entire body was shining with dazzling light, especially the light emitted by the eyes of the world on her forehead. She was using the power of the eyes of the world to connect the time and space of the worlds while blocking enemies through the falling meteors and accelerating the fusion progress of the Trinity. These falling stars were extremely similar to Toronto's ultimate move, but it was even more powerful than her starfall. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, who were fighting with her earlier, did not have any good ideas at this moment because most of these countless fallen stars were smashing down toward the four of them. This forced the four of them to spare no effort in dodging and had no time to divert their attention to stop Jubileus. Roy could not care less about fighting the ancient angels of Aesir City at this moment. Anyway, Dante and the others had successfully escaped. What he was most worried about now was Julia, Benaiah, and the others. The worlds were fusing, which meant that the spatial channel connecting the demon world to heaven was no longer useful. The entire purgatory space where the demon world was merging with heaven. In other words, Julia and Benaiah, who had already retreated to the demon world, would appear in heaven again because of this. At that time, Jubileus would likely discover Julia's existence immediately. Roy had gotten Julia to return to the demon world in order to prevent her from being found by Jubileus, so of course, he could not allow this to happen. He rode on Refaro's back and got him to pass through the gaps of the numerous meteors while he looked around to see where Julia and the others would appear. Due to the intertwining worlds, time and space were completely chaotic, and Julia and the others could suddenly appear anywhere. Refaro carried Roy while flying up and down. He was now extremely grateful that Roy had given him such a long body. If he were still his original enormous dragon size, he might have already been shot down by a meteor long ago. Now, he could rely on his mobility like a snake to find a chance to escape from the falling stars. Roy also realized the advantage of Refaro's half-mechanical body in this situation. The electronic eye on his forehead allowed him to have a huge field of vision, and through constant calculations, he could determine the most favorable escape route. Roy patted Refaro and said, "Find an opportunity to approach and save the four horsemen." Thus, Refaro used his fastest speed to enter the densest area of meteors and unceasingly found gaps through the falling meteors. After a series of snake-like movements, he really brought Roy close to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Roy found an opportunity to reach out and pull them onto Refaro's back one by one. As soon as Fury landed on Refaro's back, she roared angrily at Roy, "Osiris, you bastard! Look at how much trouble you've caused us." Roy shrugged. "There's nothing I can do. If I could deal with her, why would I need to seek help from you?" There was really nothing wrong with these words. For a moment, Fury was so choked that she could not even vent her anger. Death stretched out his hand to stop Fury and said to Roy, "We have to stop her actions. Although I don't know what's going on in this world, I can tell that she's forcibly merging two independent worlds. Once the fusion is complete, everyone will die." "Of course I know." Roy looked in the distance where Jubileus was. "But can you get close to her?" "No. I tried just now." War shook his head, causing the hood on his head to sway twice. He said in a deep voice, "This move is both offensive and defensive. Those meteors seem to have consciousness. The closer to her, the denser the meteors become and the faster they fall. If you want to rush to her, you'll probably have to face a wall made of countless meteors, and it'll be difficult to break through." "Perhaps." Roy pondered. "There might be a momentary opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" Strife used the gun in his right hand to shoot at his left arm. It was where his skin had burned after being grazed by a meteor. He used the bullet to blow away the burnt skin to allow the flesh and tissue below to regenerate. "I've observed for a while now and discovered that the fusion process between the demon world and heaven is the fastest." Roy deliberated over his words. This might be because the demon world and heaven originally belonged to the same purgatory space. So the fusion between the demon world and heaven may be completed first. At that time, all the creatures of the demon world will appear in this heaven. And in the demon world, there's an existence with Jubileus's soul fragment. She's my person, a fallen angel. Once she appears, Jubileus will immediately sense the soul fragment in her body. Understood. War put the Armageddon blade on his back. If Jubileus senses her soul fragment, she might stop and take back her soul fragment from that fallen angel first. It's also possible that this fusion process won't stop. I don't know if it will be interrupted, Roy said. But we can take a gamble. In other words, there's only a moment to assassinate Jubileus, Death said. If you want to kill a god, you really have to take a gamble. To be honest, Roy did not want Julia to be in danger. Otherwise, he would not have gotten her returned to the demon world first. But the problem was that Julia might not be able to hide now. Since he could not stop it, it was best to use the moment Julia appeared to choose the most beneficial action. Thinking of this, Roy suddenly thought of something and frowned. Fury saw his expression and could not help asking, "Did you think of something?" "I just find it strange." Roy rubbed his demon horns. After waking up, Jubileus wanted to search for her soul fragment at once. Even when you blocked her, she was still thinking about her soul fragment and wanted to go past you to the demon world. Why did she suddenly think of fusing the worlds? Isn't it making too much of a big deal to use this method to eliminate you? I find it strange too. Death nodded. Could it be related to the sudden flash of light in her right eye earlier? Flash of light in her right eye? When did this happen? Roy looked up at Death in startlement. Probably a few seconds before she activated the falling stars. We all noticed it then. Death replied. I see. Roy was enlightened. It's Balder. His consciousness is still affecting Jubileus. Yes, speaking of the right eye, Roy thought of Balder. At that time, he had fused with the statue of Jubileus with Bayonetta, and the right eye of light and the left eye of darkness were on Balder and Bayonetta. Bayonetta had fused into the left eye of the statue, and Balder had fused into the right eye. The so-called Trinity was the ultimate goal that Balder had been obsessed with and constantly pursuing. It made sense if his consciousness was affecting Jubileus's actions. So, does this mean that Bayonetta isn't dead? Roy muttered softly. Her consciousness and soul are still in Jubileus's body? Just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly answered, Of course. She won't die so easily. Roy and the four horsemen of the apocalypse turned their heads in unison and looked behind. They saw a figure appear from illusory to reality on Rafaro's back. This figure was a bald, burly man with dark skin, wearing sunglasses on his face and had a cigar in his right hand full of rings. He was smoking, and his left hand was in his pocket, giving off a wild aura. Who are you? Strife immediately aimed a gun at him. Without waiting for him to answer, Roy looked at the bald black man strangely and asked in doubt, Rodin? Oh? You know me? It was Rodin who appeared on Rafaro's back. After hearing Roy's words, he looked up at the tall Roy and said in puzzlement, I'm sure I haven't seen you, but why do you know me? Sarath is my foster son. Roy replied. Is that so? How lucky. It seems like you're Osiris, the current ruler of the demon world. Rodin grinned like a dauntless bandit. No wonder you know me. Roy asked, why are you suddenly here? The human world I'm in is also fusing. Rodin shrugged. As for why I'm here, would you believe me if I said that it's a coincidence of space-time disorder? Roy did not say anything and just stared at Rodin. I can't see through him at all. The aura that Rodin displayed felt like a demon lord's, but for some reason, Roy felt that this fellow was definitely stronger. What kind of coincidence would make him appear on Rafaro's back all of a sudden? You had to know that Rafaro was carrying everyone and flying around quickly at this time. What kind of space-time disorder could let him land on an object moving at high speed so accurately? Roy did not believe his words at all. Not only him, but the four horsemen of the apocalypse also looked at Rodin solemnly. After a moment of silence, War stepped forward and asked, Who are you? The four horsemen of the apocalypse. I've heard so much about you. Rodin nodded. I'm just a homeless demon. No, not right. Strife shook his head. You. Before he could finish speaking, Death suddenly stretched out his hand to pull Strife back. Okay, no matter who you are, tell me. What is your purpose for appearing here? It's nothing. I'm just sending you a helper. As Rodin spoke, he turned to look at Jubileus. Everyone followed his gaze and saw a figure shuttling among the falling meteors. It was a woman with silver-white hair, wearing a tight red leather suit and riding a motorcycle. This motorcycle was strangely driving in the air with the help of a unique magic field, and it even bounced back and forth on the falling meteors from time to time. It was Bayonetta's friend, the other remaining Umbra witch, Jean. Chapter 485, Unexpected identity. What does she want to do? Does she want to die? Fury could not help ridiculing as she watched Jean approaching Jubileus. Does she think that she's stronger than us four horsemen of the apocalypse and can break through the blockade to approach her? Rodin grinned. So, it's up to you guys to cover her. Without waiting for Fury to continue asking questions, Rodin explained, Balder and Bayonetta fused into Jubileus's body because the power of the right eye of light and the left eye of darkness that they carry combined into the eyes of the world. The eyes of the world provide immense energy to the just recovered Jubileus, but this doesn't mean that the souls of Balder and Bayonetta have also completely fused into Jubileus's soul. The souls of mortals can't fuse with the souls of gods. Their souls and consciousness are only temporarily residing in her body. Of course, this kind of resident can affect Jubileus's judgment to a certain extent. After all, her soul isn't in a complete state, which is why Balder's will can affect her actions. Since Balder's soul and consciousness still exist, then Bayonetta's also exist. However, her soul and consciousness may have fallen into a deep sleep. Rodin took a puff of his cigar. Jean is Bayonetta's good friend, and she's also an Umbra witch. She has come into contact with the power of the left eye of darkness, so she can sense Bayonetta's position in Jubileus's body. With this connection, she might be able to awaken Bayonetta and pull her out of Jubileus's body. Roy and the others immediately understood. Jubileus had been asleep for thousands of years, and because of the missing portion of her soul, it was impossible for her to have such great power after waking up under normal circumstances. But because the eyes of the world were supplying energy to her, she could achieve this shocking act of merging worlds. If Jean could awaken Bayonetta and pull her out, it meant that the left eye of darkness would also be taken out of her body. At that time, with only Balder's right eye of light left, the eyes of the world would no longer be able to play a role, and it would naturally not be able to provide Jubileus with immense energy. The fusion process of the worlds would also inevitably be obstructed. This was the best way to weaken Jubileus. If Jubileus is weakened, in addition to what you said earlier about the fallen angel with her soul fragment appearing in heaven from the demon world, will there be a higher chance of success in that instant? Rodin grinned. The four horsemen of the apocalypse looked at each other and then at Roy, who was deep in thought. After they heard this, their hearts could not help but palpitate. But Roy was still very calm. He stared at Rodin and asked, Rodin, it's said that you were once an angel. Now, you're deliberately helping us murder an archangel, but I don't hear anything beneficial to you from your words. I don't believe that you're so kind. Rodin laughed out loud. There are some things that don't necessarily have to be beneficial to me. You can take it that I don't like the world after fusion. To me, the world of the Trinity is bullshit. As long as I can stop the plans of heaven, I'll be very happy. Okay. Then I'll believe you once. Roy nodded and looked at the four horsemen. Looking at Roy's gaze, Death was silent for a moment before saying to him, let's give it a try. It's best to be able to kill her, but if it's impossible, we won't continue. The four horsemen of the apocalypse aren't dragoons. No matter what, we've already worked hard, and we'll treat it as fulfilling Fury and your agreement. Understood? No problem. Roy nodded. This was indeed the case. He could not expect the four horsemen to fight to the death here in order to fulfill their promise to him, right? After receiving Roy's assurance, the four horsemen once again summoned their warhorses and jumped into the sky from Refaro's back. The four magical horses neighed and carried them as they galloped in the sky. Seeing the four horsemen controlling their horses to avoid the meteors and approaching Jubileus with their superb riding skills, Roy took a deep breath and asked Refaro, haven't you detected it yet? I've detected it. The outline of Mundus's Demon King city is faintly appearing in the southeast. The space there is merging. Refaro replied. If the two mistresses appear, it's definitely there. Go, Roy shouted to Refaro. Refaro immediately twisted his body and flew southeast at high speed. Rodin's voice came from behind. Don't you care about Sparta and the others? It's no problem for them to protect themselves, Roy said without looking back. Leave the battle to the four horsemen. I only need to ensure that Julia won't be approached by Jubileus. As for you, Rodin, are you planning to follow me? Don't be so heartless. Rodin grinned. I'm just curious. If the horsemen can really help you kill Jubileus, then what will you do with her divine spark? What? You want Jubileus's divine spark? Roy finally turned his head back to look at Rodin when he heard this. Of course not. Rodin shook his head. Jubileus's divine spark is useless to me. Is that so? Roy revealed a sinister smirk. Let me guess. As a demon, you don't want a divine spark when it appears in front of you. There are only 3 reasons. The first is that you're not that greedy. Of course, this is impossible. I'm very clear about the nature of demons. The second is that you can't fuse with Jubileus's divine spark, so it's useless even if you obtain it. This possibility is there, but it doesn't seem very likely. As for the last reason, it's that you don't need a divine spark anymore. Am I right, Your Excellency Rodin? The smile on Rodin's face stiffened for a moment but then immediately returned to normal. After a long time, he said, "How did you see it?" "I can't see it, and I also couldn't tell." Roy shook his head. "The aura on you is indeed at the Demon Lord level, but even Sparta, and the other Demon Lords find the scene caused by Jubileus very troublesome. On the other hand, you still seem calm. This makes me have to guess that even if the twin worlds really become one, it won't affect you, right?" Rodin did not say anything. This attitude was equivalent to silent agreement. Roy smiled. "Then, Your Excellency Rodin, who are you? There aren't many demon kings in the abyss, and I've never heard of your name. Is your real name Lucifer or Samael? Or is it Leviathan? Mammon?" No. I'm not a clone of the deadly sin demon kings." Rodin waved his hand. "Oh?" Roy was slightly surprised. He had initially guessed that Rodin was most likely a clone that Samael had left in this world. After all, Samael had appeared in this world once and sneak-attacked Jubileus and took away a portion of her soul fragments. It made sense if he had left a clone. Rodin did not answer, and his figure gradually became blurry. It seemed that he was planning to leave. But before he left, he suddenly showed a meaningful smile and whispered, "If you want to, then you can call me Mephisto. Young demon Osiris, maybe we'll meet again." His figure completely disappeared, but the words he left behind stunned Roy for a long time. Roy's guess was totally wrong earlier. Rodin's true body was actually Mephisto? Of course, Roy was certainly not unfamiliar with this name. In fact, he had seen the name Mephisto many times in the information he collected about powerful demons. If the famous 7 deadly sin demon kings were considered the first-generation demon kings of the abyss and the ancestral demon kings, then Mephisto was a second-generation demon king of the abyss. Moreover, he was considered one of the best among the second-generation demon kings because his name had already spread widely in many worlds. It could be said that his fame was second only to the deadly sin demon kings. Roy had guessed before that among the worlds connected to the infinite worlds, there might still be the Marvel world, the Diablo world, and so on. But he did not expect to meet Mephisto so soon. This showed that his guess was true. The Marvel world and the Diablo world definitely existed because Mephisto was the most famous demon king in these 2 worlds. Of course, Rodin might only be a clone of Mephisto and not his true body, but this was enough to shock Roy. In his shock, Roy could not help but think of what Rodin said as he left, "We'll meet again." What does this mean? Mephisto has his eyes on me? Or is he planning to talk to me after the matter with Jubileus is over? Roy's imagination ran wild for a while, causing his head to ache. Fortunately, at this moment, Rufaro reminded him, and he finally restrained his thoughts. Julia, Bunaya, and the others appeared, and they were indeed near Demon King City. Not only them, but Sarath, Cassandra, and Fat Tiger were also there. It seemed that after withdrawing to the demon world, they had not disbanded the demon world army and were still preparing to counterattack. But because Jubileus had begun to merge the 2 twin worlds, they did not know what had happened while in the demon world. They were at a loss for a while after suddenly appearing in heaven again and seeing the catastrophic scene of the doomsday apocalypse. Before they were hit by meteors, Roy brought them onto Rufaro's back. But he was helpless regarding the demon army. He could only leave them exposed to the falling stars and watch as they were bombarded by meteors and turned into ashes. "Darling, what happened?" Julia lay on Rufaro's back in panic and asked helplessly, "Why did we appear in heaven again?" "Jubileus did it." Roy replied simply and looked in the distance at Jubileus. "Julia has already reappeared here, so next, Jubileus should sense her existence, right? Hopefully, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse can seize this opportunity." Chapter 486, God slaying Bayonetta. "Wake up! Bayonetta, wake up!" The cool motorcycle made a loud roar. The magic power on the front and back of the magical motorcycle shone when it came into contact with the air and created a flat surface as support for it to travel through the air. On the motorcycle, the silver-haired and red-dressed beautiful witch, Jean, was doing her best to control it. She advanced through the gaps between the falling stars and headed for Jubileus. Just as she was about to approach Jubileus, she used all her strength to shout the name of her friend Bayonetta. However, her voice and approaching figure attracted Jubileus's attention. The scepter in Jubileus's hand shook slightly. Dozens of meteors that were originally falling vertically from the sky suddenly made an L-shaped 90-degree curve during their flight and smashed straight toward Jean and her motorcycle. Jean was shocked. She hurriedly stepped on the accelerator and controlled the motorcycle to dodge. However, these meteors were so dense that there was not much space for her to pass through. After dodging several meteors, the motorcycle could no longer react in time and was hit by a meteor nearly 100 meters in diameter. This motorcycle named Angel Slayer exploded in an instant and broke into pieces. But when Jean saw that she could not avoid it, she decisively abandoned the motorcycle and jumped. After smashing the motorcycle, the meteor almost grazed the bottom of Jean's high heels. The light of magic power focused on the soles of her high heels. Jean stepped on the flames of the meteor and jumped high into the air again. Then she once again bounced off a meteor that flew close to her. While her body was still high in the sky, she had already pulled out 2 pistols and kept pulling the triggers, shooting bullets with powerful magic power forward. A meteor that came toward her exploded under the bombardment of the bullets. Countless tiny pieces of rubble flew over with immense kinetic energy and flames, colliding with the magic power shield that Jean was maintaining but failed to cause much damage to her. However, behind the exploding meteor, an even larger one came, covering the sky and the earth as it smashed toward Jean. The massive size made it impossible for her to dodge. Jean folded her arms and legs in front of her to protect herself. The moment the meteor hit her, her entire body suddenly turned into a group of illusionary purple moths. The illusions of these moths only appeared for an instant before Jean's body reappeared. But strangely, as her body appeared, the surrounding space and time seemed to have entered a very slow state. Which time? Although the Umbra Witches did not have the left eye of darkness, they could all use a trace of its power to let them enter this special state. In the delayed time and space, Jean suddenly leapt forward. When she landed on the surface of a meteor, her body had already turned into a black lynx. The lynx's feet were full of the radiance of magic power as she stepped on the slowly swaying flames on the meteor's surface and quickly ran forward. In just a few seconds, she crossed the huge arc of the meteor. The next moment, the lynx jumped up on the spot, and the surrounding time and space returned to normal. The meteor swept past her feet, and Jean was out of danger. Seeing that Jean had dodged the meteor attack, Jubileus waved the golden cross scepter in her hand expressionlessly again. This time, more meteors turned around to bombard Jean. Thousands of meteors formed an incomparably gigantic wall in front of Jean, and the blazing flames on the meteors looked as though they wanted to burn people to ashes. Bayonetta! Jean screamed again in despair, but she still rushed toward the approaching meteors without hesitation. If my death can awaken my good friend Bayonetta, then let me sacrifice myself here. Seeing the meteors were about to hit her, Jean was prepared to sacrifice herself. But at this moment, 4 beams of light flew over from behind. These 4 beams rushed in front of Jean to meet the incoming meteors and exploded and shattered them one after another. Jean looked at the 4 beams of light in front of her in astonishment. In the light, 4 tall knights were riding on majestic horses. 2 of them were wielding a golden sword and a long scythe in their hands as they continuously smashed the meteors coming at them. Another knight with 2 guns was constantly firing and shooting down the rubble that was the greatest threat after the explosions. Jean did not know who these 4 mighty and domineering knights were, but she knew that they were here to help her. The sound of air being torn apart rang out. Before Jean could react, a long whip wrapped around her waist. A tremendous force came, and the long whip wrapped around her dragged her away. She finally landed on the horse of a female knight. "We'll clear the way for you," Fury said to Jean without looking back. Jean did not say anything. She nodded and hugged Fury's waist tightly to prevent herself from flying off the high-speed horse. At the same time, she kept shouting Bayonetta's name at Jubileus. Who knew if it was because Jean's call worked, but the meteors that were continuously smashing toward them suddenly stopped. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse did not hesitate. They immediately broke through the defense line of the meteors and appeared near Jubileus. Although it was near Jubileus, it was actually still nearly a kilometer away from her. In order to complete the world fusion of the Trinity, Jubileus had already restored her enormous body size and was floating in the sky like a gigantic building. Precisely because of her enormous body size, even from thousands of meters away, everyone could see the left eye under the ball mask on her face constantly flickering at this moment. Rodin was right. Bayonetta's consciousness did not dissipate. Under Jean's call, she seemed to show signs of awakening. Go! War and Death shook their reins and controlled their warhorses to charge toward Jubileus while Fury swung her whip and entangled Jean again. "Little girl, it's up to you." With that, without waiting for Jean to respond, Fury suddenly swung her whip and threw her out. Under the tremendous force, Jean turned into a meteor and flew in an arc against the howling air resistance toward Jubileus. With War and Death's charge attracting Jubileus's attention, Jean's small body accurately landed on her hair bun. Jubileus and the four horsemen of the apocalypse began fighting again. And while swaying, Jean struggled down the bun and finally arrived at Jubileus's left eye. She knew that her good friend Bayonetta was in this eye. Sensing the ant on her face, Jubileus was naturally unhappy. During the battle, she stretched out her left hand to try and get Jean away from her eye, but the four horsemen naturally could not let her succeed. They entangled Jubileus tightly, and Fury even swung her long whip to pull her wrist away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jean's hands glowed with the light of magic power, and she directly inserted them into Jubileus's left eye. Countless arcs of lightning immediately spread throughout her entire body, but she endured the pain and searched bit by bit, using her connection with the left eye of darkness to look for Bayonetta. When she finally withdrew her hands, she carried out a graceful body. Who else could it be other than Bayonetta? After being pulled out by Jean, Bayonetta slowly woke up and saw Jean looking at her with a smile on her face. But before the two of them could say anything, Jubileus suddenly screamed in pain. Fury's whip was entangling Jubileus's left hand, but after the scream, her left hand suddenly moved and broke the whip. Under the mask, Jubileus's face revealed a pained expression as she covered her left eye with her left hand. When Jean saw Jubileus's giant palm pressing over, she realized that things were bad and jumped off with Bayonetta. A warhorse flew over, and strife caught the two of them. Anyone could tell that something was wrong with Jubileus's situation. The third eye shining in the middle of her eyebrows suddenly glowed brighter, then immediately dimmed and began to flicker back and forth. It felt as though it was out of control. It was indeed out of control. The eyes of the world was not Jubileus's own power but originally Archangel Aesir's. She was only borrowing it. Now, Jean had basically forcibly pulled Bayonetta out of her body. After suddenly losing the left eye of darkness, the eyes of the world was missing half, leaving only Baldur's right eye of light. A functioning system, which had been running at high speed, suddenly had one of its components taken away, so it would be strange if nothing happened. With Jubileus's painful screaming, her aura suddenly weakened a lot, and the magic power throughout her body seemed to go berserk. Even the four horsemen of the apocalypse could feel the magic power conflict in her body. The falling meteors in the sky suddenly stopped, and the fusion of the two twin worlds gradually slowed down. Of course, the four horsemen would not let go of such a good opportunity. They put away their warhorses and jumped up high in unison. The bodies of the four swelled up a lot at this moment, turning into giants about 4 meters tall. These four giants held their weapons and attacked Jubileus's head. Jubileus sensed the danger. She endured the pain and moved her left hand that was covering her eye. She held her scepter with both hands and erupted with immense magic power, preparing to meet the attack of the four horsemen. However, at this moment, a trace of throbbing from her soul suddenly appeared. Jubileus sensed familiar fluctuations suddenly appear in this world in the distance, so she subconsciously turned her head to look in another direction. This direction was where Julia appeared in heaven. This momentary absent-mindedness came so suddenly and naturally. By the time Jubileus regained her senses, it was already too late. The four horsemen's weapons carrying the strong power of judgment had already penetrated her body. War's Armageddon blade stabbed down and pierced through Jubileus's head, Death's huge scythe slashed her throat, Strife's magic power bullets shot through her right eye, and Fury's whip turned into a straight spear and pierced through her heart. The world seemed to be utterly still at this moment, and only this scene remained in the world. A demon eye transmitted this scene to Roy in the distance. He looked at this scene and only said, "These guys are really rough." Chapter 487, Walking into a Trap. Light seeped out from all over Jubileus's body. Although the four horsemen of the apocalypse attacked the vital points of Jubileus, to a god, there was no such thing as vital points. Their attacks were nothing more than pouring the power of judgment into her body. As the power of authority bestowed to the four horsemen by the Charred Council, the power of judgment was something that Jubileus could not control and resist. After these alien powers ran back and forth throughout her body, her immortal elemental body could no longer be healed and repaired. If it were before, it might have been fine. She could have used the power of the eyes of the world to reverse time. But now that Bayonetta had awakened and was taken out of her body, the power of the eyes of the world was missing and could not be used normally. This was the greatest result of the assassination of the four horsemen. Like a leaking balloon, Endless holy light leaked out from the wounds on Jubileus's body. She held her head with both hands and screamed, but she could not stop the leaking process. All the holy light and magic power in her body escaped uncontrollably into the atmosphere, causing her body to shrink at a visible speed. The more the power that belonged to Jubileus leaked, the stronger the power of judgment that belonged to the four horsemen became. Before she could return to her normal size, there was a sudden bang, and a dazzling light appeared. A golden sun seemed to appear in the sky of heaven, and her body completely exploded. There was no scene of flesh and blood flying everywhere. All the fragments of Jubileus's body turned into golden holy light the moment she exploded and flew in all directions. The entire explosion process was like a solar flare, and the burst disappeared in an instant. Whether it was angels, demons, or humans, as long as they appeared in the purgatory space of heaven, they all saw this golden flare. The moment the flare disappeared, an immense and incomparable force spread out and engulfed all of heaven. The four horsemen, as well as Bayonetta and Jean, who were very close to them, spat out a mouthful of blood in the shock wave. Then they were instantly blown away and rolled for an unknown distance. Even Roy, Julia, and the others, who were farther away, were sent flying, as though they had been hit by a heavy hammer when the shock wave arrived a moment later. The force of the shock wave spread throughout the entirety of heaven, and as the distance increased, it slowly declined. This was the power of a god when they exploded, and its power was no less than a nuclear weapon with a yield of millions of tons. During the process of being smashed flying, Roy did his best to protect Julia and the others. Looking at the scene after Jubileus exploded, he could not help but rejoice that he was not close at that time. The four horsemen of the apocalypse suffered this explosion at close range, and even if they did not die, they would probably be severely injured. The darkness and starry sky covering all of heaven were blown away, and the sky above heaven became incomparably clear again. Even the holy light that once permeated everywhere was now gone. In the center of the explosion, only an enormous golden soul remained floating. After being blown nearly 5 kilometers away, Roy and Julia finally resisted the power of the shockwave and stabilized their bodies. They looked up and saw the enormous golden soul in the distant sky. To be precise, they did not see it because they were too far away, but they actually sensed it. The existence of this golden soul was too powerful. When Roy activated his radiation perception, he saw that the soul was continuously emitting electromagnetic waves. Unlike any soul that Roy had seen in the past, Jubileus's soul was still radiating light and heat even after being exposed. Of course, only angels and demons could see and sense this soul. The humans who had unfortunately entered this place because of the fusion of the worlds could not see it. They could only feel that there seemed to be something very special and awe-inspiring in the sky. The souls of gods were still full of pressure, even when exposed to the outside and at their weakest moment. Roy knew very well that the four horsemen had only destroyed Jubileus's body. Before her soul was eliminated, she had not completely perished, so he could not let her soul escape. It was enough for Mundus's soul to escape once. If her soul also escaped, it would bring him endless trouble. However, before he could rush toward the soul, it turned into a golden stream of light and flew toward him. Roy was stunned for a moment before realizing what was going on. Jubileus's soul was not targeting him but Julia. Putting himself in her shoes, what would he do if his body was destroyed and only his soul was left? There were two choices: escape immediately, or find a body for the soul to possess as soon as possible. Under normal circumstances, a body could not accommodate two souls. But a powerful external soul could eliminate the soul in the original body and then occupy it. This was the commonly known possession phenomenon. Although the coordination and adaptability between the captured body and the external soul would be very poor, it was much better than exposing the soul in the air. It had to be known that the influence on coordination and adaptability could be reduced through soul tuning in the future. As long as they survived the crisis, external souls could even abandon this body and look for a suitable body to resurrect in. The above referred to the situation where the seized body was incompatible with the soul. Then, what if the original soul of this body was from the same source as the external soul? When analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of clones in the past, Roy had actually considered a possibility. High-ranked demons splitting soul fragments to create clones might not only be to increase their methods of hunting souls, but there was also a possibility that it was to save themselves. After all, demons traveled back and forth the infinite worlds, and they could die at any time if they encountered a strong enemy. If their souls could escape after their bodies were destroyed, then the clones they created could become a means to preserve themselves. This was like leaving a portion of your savings when gambling. Even if you lost, you would have the capital to make a comeback. Due to the clone and the main body soul having the same origin, there would be no difference in coordination and adaptability. At most, it was just a slightly weaker body, and there was no other effect. And Julia's soul came from Jubileus's soul fragment, which was equivalent to Julia being a clone of Jubileus. Now that Jubileus had lost her body and a ready-made clone was right in front of her, of course she could not abandon the near and escape to seek the far. Possessing Julia became her best choice. Even though Julia was a fallen angel and used dark power, it was no problem for a soul with a divine spark like Jubileus's. As long as she possessed Julia's body, she could purify the dark power in Julia's body at any time and restore her identity as an angel. Describing it was troublesome, but in fact, this judgment only took a moment in Roy's mind. After understanding Jubileus's intentions, he could not help but grin sinisterly. Jubileus's thoughts were quite beautiful. She clearly saw that Roy was already guarding Julia at her side, but she still rushed over without a care. Did she think that a demon lord like Roy could not do anything to her soul? Indeed, the soul of the goddess of light was full of infinite holy light power. Under the circumstances of releasing immense light and heat, no demon could devour such a soul. At least before becoming a demon king, no demon would dare to devour Jubileus's soul. Roy was the same. The soul of a god was poison to him. This was what she was relying on. Without the four horsemen of the apocalypse stopping her, she could completely ignore Roy's existence and directly ram her soul into Julia's body. However, just as Jubileus's soul flew over and was about to reach Roy and Julia, something strange suddenly appeared in Roy's hand. It was a cube about the size of a basketball and looked like a metal box. There were some complicated patterns engraved on the metal box, and it floated above Roy's palm, constantly rotating and changing angles. When Jubileus's soul flew over, Roy gently threw the metal box. The moment it left his palm, the metal box suddenly opened, and the 6 sides separated into 6 iron plates. After Jubileus's soul crashed into the encirclement of the 6 iron plates, they instantly closed together and enveloped her entire soul in the box. Souls were originally intangible, and it was impossible for them to be trapped by an ordinary metal box. However, Jubileus found that her soul could not pass through the metal box and escape. Her entire soul was trapped in the box, filling up the whole space. Her soul slammed around in the box, causing it to shake violently, but she could not rush out no matter what. What is this? Jubileus shouted in panic in the box. A container that could trap the souls of gods was beyond her understanding. Ha 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 ha. Roy spread his demon wings and laughed loudly in the air. Stop struggling. This is a divine artifact specially made to trap your soul. Julia and Benaiah returned to their senses and looked at the metal box curiously. Huh? Isn't this your heraldric cube? That's right. This box was indeed an item that Roy had made in the past, the heraldric cube. But in order to facilitate the separation of everyone's Ouroboros marks after obtaining the Mobius mark, he had spent a considerable amount of souls to upgrade the heraldric cube. The current heraldric cube was version 2.0, and Roy called it, Kanye's cube. Chapter 488, Be a Creator Once. Before upgrading the heraldric cube, Roy mainly used it to transmute souls. In the system, different souls had different uses. As someone with a cheat, Roy naturally could not waste time deliberately nurturing the souls he needed. For example, fallen souls. Under normal circumstances, it required a person full of negative emotions, greed, and difficulty satisfying themselves to give birth to such souls. In order to obtain such souls, Roy could either search for such people one by one or fulfill his demon duties and personally tempt others to fall. He did this in the beginning. But ever since he had the heraldric cube, he could transmute ordinary souls into the souls he wanted at will. However, that was all the use of the heraldric cube. The function of this item was relatively simple. When Sparta mentioned how to separate the Ouroboros marks from Mundus's soul, the first thing Roy thought of was the heraldric cube. He planned to expand the uses of the heraldric cube. After all, synthesis and decomposition had always been a unified function. Kanye's cube, divine artifact. Soul synthesis. Using low-quality souls, you can synthesize high-quality souls at will. Alchemy synthesis. Using various mineral elements, you can synthesize any metal and alloy that exists in the world. Extract. You can extract the special powers contained in certain powerful objects and preserve them. Decomposition. By analyzing any object placed inside, you can strip and decompose the object into any form. These were the attributes of Kanye's cube after the upgrade. Because Roy's definitions of the new attributes were rather vague, The system could expand them to the highest and best direction when upgrading Kanye's cube. This caused him to invest a considerable number of souls, almost all the souls he had obtained after coming to this world. These souls mainly came from a few sources. One of them was the whip demons that he had eliminated in the whip demon lair when he was searching for Sparta. With the spread of the rabies virus, he had almost cleared out the whip demon lair. Just from this alone, he had obtained millions of souls. The second source was the souls obtained by the demons under Mundus before the battle with him. There were relatively few souls from this. The third source was the souls produced when the demon world attacked heaven and carried out the large-scale war. Among these souls, there were demon ones and angel ones, and the number was immense. There were about 20 million souls in total, all of which he invested into the upgrade and transformation of Kanye's cube. Of course, after the transformation, the system gave it the definition of divine artifact. So-called divine artifacts did not necessarily mean that they were something created by gods, but things with powerful functions that exceeded the normal threshold. Roy's Frostmourne was a divine artifact because this sword had unimaginable curse abilities, and Kanye's cube was a divine artifact because of its unimaginable alchemy ability. After trapping Jubileus's soul, Roy began to operate this new divine artifact for the first time. His demon claws were placed in front of him in a hugging posture, covering Kanye's cube with his palms. And two streams of magic power connected to the cube, establishing a connection with it. At this moment, Kanye's cube was glowing with faint light as it changed angles at a constant speed, rolling like a ball. In the magic cube, Jubileus was still screaming and struggling. But Roy ignored her and excitedly used the magic power connection to check what was in Jubileus's soul through the analysis of Kanye's cube. Huh? This is Baldur's soul? In the analysis results, the first thing Roy found was Baldur's soul. He discovered that Baldur's soul had already fused with Jubileus's soul. This fusion was either voluntary by Baldur or due to being devoured and assimilated by Jubileus's soul. But considering that Bayonetta came out in one piece, it was very likely that it was the former. Baldur took the initiative to fuse his soul into Jubileus's soul, thereby affecting her actions with his consciousness and beliefs. But Roy knew that this effect might only be temporary. After all, although Jubileus's soul was lacking, her soul was still the soul of a god and much stronger than Baldur's soul. As time passed, she might no longer be affected by his remaining consciousness, and at that time, Baldur would completely die. There was evidence for this. Roy had once devoured the soul of the angel Uriel, and he had discovered the consciousness and memories contained in Uriel's soul. But it was only for a short while. After the soul fusion was complete, he could no longer feel Uriel's consciousness. Now, the soul fusion between Baldur and Jubileus was still incomplete, but it would probably finish soon. Roy pondered for a while and simply separated Baldur's soul through Kanye's cube. The lid on top of Kanye's cube opened and spat out a small soul ball before immediately reclosing. This small soul ball was Baldur's soul. Roy put it away first. He had noticed earlier that when Jean pulled Bayonetta out, she was not in the form of a soul but still retained her original body. He originally thought that it would be the same for Baldur. But since the four horsemen of the apocalypse had destroyed Jubileus's body, his body was definitely finished. Although there was only the soul left, Roy found that there was still the power of the right eye of light in Baldur's soul after analyzing. In other words, this divine artifact was probably bound to the souls of Baldur and Bayonetta. He thought that he might be able to extract the power of the right eye of light by separating Baldur's soul. If possible, he still wanted the power of Bayonetta's left eye of darkness. At that time, if he could synthesize the eyes of the world again, then he might be able to control the power of time through the eyes of the world. However, if he wanted to obtain the left eye of darkness from Bayonetta, he probably could not use force. Behind Bayonetta was the existence of the demon Rodin. Since Rodin claimed to be a clone of Mephisto, Roy had to be careful because he did not know what kind of thoughts Rodin had regarding Bayonetta. According to Roy's understanding, Rodin should appreciate this woman very much. If Roy dared to hurt Bayonetta, then Rodin might fight him. Of course, even if he could not force it, he had other methods. He would wait until he finished dealing with the matter at hand. After Roy separated out Baldur's soul, there was only the soul of Jubileus's main body left in the cube. After thoroughly analyzing her soul, he found that the composition of a soul was quite complicated. In the soul, there were numerous particles. These particles were not things such as atoms, molecules, or cells in the conventional sense. They were invisible and did not exist in the macroscopic world, but they were not a mystical category such as elements. These particles were like tiny bubbles, with memory fragments wrapped inside. They were the miniature scenes of all the deep memories of Jubileus over the countless years. Moreover, not only did every small particle contain memory fragments, but Roy also found the presence of world marks. Yes, a world mark did not exist in a soul as a whole but was engraved in every particle that formed the soul. In other words, if every small particle in the soul was taken out individually, a world mark could be found. Perhaps this was the true reason why souls could be divided into many fragments at will. Because when they were divided, it was equivalent to stripping out a portion of the particles, and the particles that were removed all had marks. Everyone had such a world mark. Whether they were an angel or a demon, an elf or a human, from the moment they were born, they had been engraved by the world they were in. The marks of angels came from the Ouroboros mark of heaven, and the marks of demons came from the Ouroboros mark of the abyss. As for the marks of humans, they should have been engraved by the worlds they were born in, and it was likely that they would also have such Ouroboros marks. Of course, for a god like Jubileus, the mark in her soul had already become a Mobius mark, and it was also in every particle. Roy guessed that this kind of code-like behavior was probably a kind of world law. For some reason, when he looked at the scene analyzed in Kanye's cube, he felt that he was not a cheat but a creator. The perspective of the creator when he created souls was probably similar. After discovering the composition of souls, Roy felt a headache. How should he put it? If he were to pursue it in detail, the reason why angels and demons could see souls might be that these particles that formed souls were directly projected into the minds of angels and demons. Yes, he felt that souls seemed to be more inclined toward objects of spiritual materialization. The composition of souls exceeded his understanding. After being dumbfounded for a while, he decided not to think too much about it. Otherwise, he would easily become bald. Although Roy's demon body no longer had any hair. Since he had analyzed the composition of Jubileus's soul, it was relatively easy to separate out the marks in her soul. He only needed to take out all the Mobius marks in every particle. As Roy controlled Kanye's cube, countless tiny Mobius marks were decomposed one after another. Then these decomposed Mobius marks spontaneously gathered together and finally formed a large shining mark. He had obtained the divine spark. Chapter 489, It's actually 1.5. The shining Mobius mark was two small snakes biting each other's tails. They formed an 8-ring and slowly moved in this shape, looking as though they were alive. As they moved, the scales on their bodies reflected all kinds of different colors in a pattern, making the entire Mobius mark look like a rainbow. If you looked closely, you would find that the two small snakes actually looked a little different. One of the small snakes had a pair of slightly sharp horns on its forehead, and the other snake had a pair of immature white wings on its back. This meant that they respectively represented the Ouroboros mark of the demons and the Ouroboros mark of the angels. It was the first time Roy had seen the mark manifested. He looked at it obsessively and could not help but reach out to grab it, but his palm passed through the mark and touched nothing. This thing was illusory. It did not actually exist in the material world, but it was real because its lights and shadows could project into anyone's vision. Not only did Roy see it, but Julia and Benaiah saw it as well. It's shockingly beautiful. Benaiah's infatuated eyes revealed her desire. She knew that this was what all demons dreamed of, but she also knew that this divine spark belonged to Roy, so she had no other thoughts. With Benaiah's reminder, Roy returned to his senses and looked around vigilantly. Jubileus's divine spark might attract the greed of other demons. Fortunately, Roy had not approached the center of the battlefield to catch Jubileus. After her body exploded, the impact of the shock wave swept through the entire battlefield and blew everyone away. So apart from his own people, Roy could not see any other demons or angels around him for a while. Even so, he was not careless. He sped up and began to decompose Jubileus's soul. The Mobius mark was a projection phenomenon of lights and shadows that could not be captured. Balder had used a divine artifact like the right eye of light to carry it. If Roy wanted to preserve the Mobius mark, he needed to use Kanye's cube. But Jubileus's soul was still in Kanye's cube, so he had to deal with it first. Split into 10 parts. No, the smaller, the better. Let's see if I can split it into 50 parts first. Roy began to control the cube to divide up Jubileus's soul. Dividing up the soul was, of course, for Julia. Roy planned to let her devour Jubileus's soul bit by bit, thereby reversing the roles between the main body and the clone. So for dividing her soul, the smaller, the better. This way, Julia would remain unaffected when she devoured it. Roy did not want to waste so much effort but finally end up resurrecting Jubileus. He did not know why, but after he separated out the Mobius mark, Jubileus's soul fell silent and no longer transmitted her soul's voice. Her soul no longer struggled in the cube and completely quieted down. When he controlled Kanye's cube to divide her soul, she still remained silent. The lid of the cube opened, and a soul fragment popped out. It was a soul fragment the size of a fingernail, and the light on it was very dim. Roy flicked his finger and threw this fragment to Julia. Julia held this soul fragment in her hand and felt the throbbing sensation of the fragment connecting to her. She could not help gulping and looking up at Roy. Roy nodded. "Swallow it. If you find anything wrong, tell me immediately." She no longer hesitated and swallowed the soul fragment. As soon as the soul fragment entered her mouth, it immediately turned into countless light spots and melted into her body. Roy did not know if it was an illusion, but after she swallowed this soul fragment, he found that her eyes seemed to be a little brighter. Everyone, including Sarath, looked at Julia curiously and waited for her reaction. But after sensing for a while, she found that there was nothing different from before. Roy thought about it and threw another soul fragment of the same size to her. Just like that, Julia swallowed several of Jubileus's soul fragments. When she swallowed the fifth one, she suddenly let out a low scream and hugged her head. Seeing this abnormal reaction, Roy quickly hugged her and asked her about her situation. But she did not know what was going on. She only felt a splitting headache, and even talking was strenuous. This situation lasted for a few minutes before Julia found that the pain was slowly dissipating. When her head finally stopped hurting, she did not dare to continue. "I feel that I've probably reached my limit for now. It's best to continue merging with the remaining soul fragments after some time." Roy nodded. This was the first time they were doing this soul fusion of reversing the main body and the clone, so they naturally could not rush it. Although the divided soul fragments were small, each of them contained a lot of Jubileus's memories and emotions. If Julia could not digest these memories, it was very likely that Jubileus's memories would replace her memories. This way, it would be dangerous, and Julia might end up with a personality disorder due to memory confusion or even cause Jubileus to resurrect. What Julia needed to do now was digest the memories in her soul bit by bit and maintain a clear sense of her self-awareness at all times. She had to change the role of the personality in Jubileus's memories and turn these foreign memories into her own memories so that she could complete the final conversion of primary and secondary. Roy did not know if such a personality memory conversion had ever happened in the past, but there was likely a high chance. After all, demons had a deep understanding of souls. As long as they understood the relationship between the memories in the soul and the consciousness of the personality, they could logically deduce this conversion method. Roy stored all of Jubileus's soul fragments in the system space. After emptying Kanye's cube, he sealed the exposed Mobius mark in it again and prepared to separate the Mobius mark. Because this Mobius mark came from Mundus, the marks of the demons of the demon world were also in it. Of course, Roy did not need to care about the marks of those low-level demons at all. He only needed to separate out the Ouroboros marks of Julia, Benaiah, Sparta, Burial, Madama Styx, and so on. Separating out the marks of these demons should not affect the composition of the Mobius mark too much. At worst, the mark would be slightly less condensed, so it should be safe. However, after Roy analyzed the mark with Kanye's cube, he suddenly showed an expression of surprise. "What's wrong?" Benaiah asked. "There are actually two Mobius marks in this divine spark." Roy looked back at Benaiah and said doubtfully. "Huh? Two?" Benaiah and Julia were also surprised. However, everyone quickly realized that there should be two. When Sarath followed Dante and the others to find Rodin, they had analyzed that Baldur wanted to create a divine spark mark in order to repair Julia's soul and divine spark. It had to be known that Jubileus was originally an archangel and at the level of a god. In other words, before she fell into a deep sleep, she should have had a divine spark mark. Even though Samael had ambushed her when she descended into this world and snatched a portion of her soul, he would not take her divine spark away. If Jubileus's divine spark had been taken away, it would have been impossible for the angels not to notice. Otherwise, they would not have designed a trap for Mundus and synthesized the Mobius mark to repair Jubileus's soul. With this divine spark, wouldn't it be good to create another god? Therefore, to be precise, it was the damage to her soul that caused her divine spark to be damaged during these thousands of years. And in order to maintain her soul, it suffered further damage. Jubileus's divine spark mark should be composed of two identical Mobius marks. Needless to say, one of them was the Ouroboros mark condensed by Mundus using the marks of demons, plus the mark condensed by Baldur using the marks of angels. After the two combined to form a Mobius mark, it was sent to Jubileus's body. The other mark should be the divine spark mark that Jubileus herself had. This divine spark mark was damaged. These two Mobius marks were actually independent. Because of the overlap and superposition effect when they were in Jubileus, they could be considered to have repaired her divine spark. But now, if Roy wanted to use Kanye's cube to decompose it, it meant that he could actually break it down into 1.5 divine sparks. If Roy used them on himself, then one divine spark would be enough because his soul was complete and would not affect the use of the divine spark. Then, what about the remaining half, which was the incomplete divine spark that belonged to Jubileus? Logically speaking, this divine spark originated from Jubileus, so he could just throw it directly to Julia. Perhaps after completing the soul fusion, she could directly cross the Demon Lord level and promote to the Demon King level. But the problem was that this divine spark was incomplete and had lost a lot of power. If he rashly gave it to Julia, what if something went wrong? Roy was not the only one thinking this. Julia and Benaiah were as well. After thinking carefully for a while, Benaiah suggested, "I think it's better to wait until Julia completes the soul fusion. This will probably take a lot of time. Maybe we can find a way to repair the divine spark in other worlds during this time." "Makes sense." Roy nodded. He did not hesitate anymore and directly separated out this half-divine spark, then separated out everyone's Ouroboros mark and sent them back to their bodies. Finally, Roy pressed Kanye's cube into his body, pushing the complete divine spark that had not changed much into his body. The next second, Roy felt his mind buzz, and he could not help but close his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he only felt that everything he saw was different.